Prepare to embark on a great and exciting journey, as you have chosen to be self-initiated into the sacred mysteries. The powers of the universe have been delicately rearranged to garner the synchronicities which brought you to this film. Join us as we explore an age-old science and unravel the truths behind an art which has been shrouded in secrecy until now. Alchemy is a sacred science that's been practiced for thousands of years. Many would argue it's as old as civilization itself. The word alchemy translates al, Kemet, or from Egypt, as Egypt was well known as Kemet in ancient times. Kemet means the black land, as Egypt was well known for this due to their highly fertile soils along the Nile.
The term alchemy comes from the Arabic al-Chem, which in turn is said to come from the Egyptian Chem, meaning black, and referring to the Egyptians' own name for their country, Kemet, the Black Land. Thus the term alchemy is the origin of the term black art, though the meaning is very different than that later ascribed to this phrase. However, others say that the word comes from the Greek chemi. Considering that the Egyptians and the Greeks were in close contact for hundreds of years, and that the Greeks in fact ruled Egypt through the Ptolemaic dynasty for 300 years, and that each seriously influenced the culture of the other, the term could very well be a play on both words. The Hellenistic era, and Hellenistic Egypt in particular, was a very fertile time in the history of magic. Ancient forms of magic met and merged, creating new disciplines. Magical forms still very much in use today, such as Hermeticism and alchemy, have their origin in Hellenistic Egypt.
Much of alchemy is highly misunderstood and has been kept secret in a variety of magical and fraternal organizations. The list of alchemists is known to originate with Thoth, who is widely credited for being the author of science, religion, mathematics, geometry, philosophy, medicine, and magic. Thoth is said to bring to civilization the calculations for the establishment of the heavens, stars, earth, and everything in them. In other words, matter. Compare this to how his feminine counterpart, Mot, was the force which maintained the universe, otherwise, spirit. The unification of matter and spirit became a centerpiece in alchemical thought. As the teaching spread, Thoth became known in other cultures as the Greek god Hermes. The two formally became the same as Hermes Trismegistus, of which he is currently known. This was the birth of the Hermetic tradition, and remains the same in many aspects today. One of the foundational manuscripts of alchemy is known as the Emerald Tablet, which is said to contain the secrets of the art. Many translations are available. Perhaps one of the most well-known was done by Isaac Newton. "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing. And as all things have been and arose from one by the meditation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation. The sun is its father, the moon its mother. The wind hath carried in its belly, the earth its nurse. The father of all perfection, and the whole world is here. Its force or power is entire if it be converted into earth. Separate thou the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, sweetly with great industry. It ascends from the earth to the heaven, and again it descends to the earth, and receives the fourth thing superior and inferior. By this means you shall have the glory of the whole world, and thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. Its force is above all force, for it vanquishes every subtle thing, and penetrates every solid thing. So was the world created. From this are and do come admirable adaptations, whereof the means or process is here in this. Hence I am called Hermes Trismegistus, having the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. That which I have said of the operation of the sun is accomplished and ended." Famous alchemists have included the likes of Pythagoras, Galileo, Da Vinci, and Isaac Newton.
Newton was not only the father of physics, he tried to be the father of chemistry as well, except back then in the 1600s they called it alchemy. So we have to realize that science, as noble as it is, has very humble beginnings.
In fact, Many researchers feel very strongly about how important the teachings were and the influence alchemy has had on many of the great minds of our time.
The secret teachings were known as esoteric or occult or symbolist teachings and were held to contain the secrets of the universe and the keys to great magic. Those who were allowed to receive the mysteries often went on to join a who's who of historical movers and shakers. Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Galileo, Copernicus, Da Vinci, Kepler, Isaac Newton, Napoleon. They were rewarded for their pursuit of the ancient wisdom with not just knowledge, but a new way of thinking that allowed them to write their names in human history. Hermeticism and the writings of the Hermetica were held to be the Western retelling of the wisdom of the mystery schools. They contained, albeit in a degenerated form, strains of the ancient wisdom said to have been passed down from the gods.
There are fragmentary Hermetic texts dates in dispute, but dating from 3rd, 2nd, 1st centuries AD, in which the language and mode of expression is ancient Greek, but the subject matter is, if not entirely, largely derived from, or actually a part of, the ancient Egyptian doctrine of the transformation of the soul. This is the basis of the Hermetic belief, and it then proliferates into those various disciplines, is practiced in one form or another throughout Islam, percolates up into Western Europe, the Italian Renaissance, and then occupies much of the minds and arts and studies of major Renaissance figures, up to and including Isaac Newton, who actually spent much more time of his life studying alchemy and number symbolism than he did studying what would now be modern science. This is an acknowledged fact that is seldom acknowledged by modern scientists, but as a matter of fact, Newton might be called not one of the last, certainly, but one of the most eminent of the Hermeticists.
The alchemist's journey is known as the Great Work and is broken down into several chemical, psychological, physiological, societal, and planetary levels. The alchemists work with what is known as the 3 primes, or tria prima. These are sulfur, the omnipresent spirit of life; mercury, the fluid connection between the high and the low; and salt, base matter. The 4 elements are also very important to the alchemist and stand as primary principles: fire, water, earth, and air. All play an integral part in the alchemist's studies. The alchemist is familiar with 7 primary metals which are ruled, influenced, or dominated by 7 planetary influences used in alchemical work. They are gold, dominated by the sun, which provides energy and life to everything in the solar system. The sun is our sense of self, our willpower, organizing ability, self-integration, energy levels, vitality, and success. The sun corresponds to the heart, spinal column, vision, and distribution of heat in the body. Silver, dominated by the moon, which influences water, growth, fertility, conception, emotions, instinct, subconscious, psychic phenomena, collective consciousness, rhythms and cycles, genetics, and cultural heritage. The moon corresponds to the brain, female organs, stomach, and all fluids in the body. Copper, dominated by Venus, which influences herbalism, spagyrics, magic, arts, music, poetry, design, theater, harmony, proportion, integration, meditation of opposites into a whole, odors, perfumes, and love. Venus corresponds to the skin, kidneys, perspiration, transformation and enrichment of substances within the body, sexual organs, and smell. Iron, dominated by Mars, which influences intense and often violent energy that brings dynamic power to all it encounters. It increases psychic ability as well as motion and power in the physical realm. Mars corresponds to the muscular system, male sexual organs, marrow, blood formation, adrenaline, and the purging of the body to maintain health. 10. Dominated by Jupiter, which influences good health, wealth, philosophical and religious matters, ceremony, and the enjoyment of life. Jupiter corresponds to the liver, arteries of the stomach and abdomen, digestion and assimilation of oxygen and nutrition, antibiotic functions, cell growth, and general energy levels. Mercury, dominated by Mercury, which influences communication, commerce, initiation into the mysteries, alchemy, Kabbalah, astrology, magic, writing, transmission of information, nerves, dexterity, mental skills, speedy distribution of energy. Mercury corresponds to the nerves, speech, hearing, coordination between thoughts and speech or actions, throat, thyroid, nervous system, and spinal fluid. Lead, dominated by Saturn, which influences old age, chronic disease, karma, and learning. Saturn corresponds to the bones, teeth, spleen, hair, minerals in the body, joints, and flexibility. Calcination is the first of the following 7 major operations in the alchemy of transformation. Chemically, the calcination process involves heating a substance in a crucible or over an open flame until it is reduced to ashes. In the Arcanum experiment, calcination is represented by sulfuric acid, which the alchemist made from a naturally occurring substance called vitriol. Sulfuric acid is a powerful corrosive that eats away flesh and reacts with all metals except gold. Psychologically, this is the destruction of ego and our attachments to material possessions. Calcination is usually a natural humbling process, as we are gradually assaulted and overcome by the trials and tribulations of life, though it can be a deliberate surrender of our inherent hubris gained through a variety of spiritual disciplines that ignite the fire of introspection and self-evaluation. Physiologically, the fire of calcination can be experienced as the metabolic discipline or aerobic activity that tunes the body, burning off excesses from overindulgence and producing a lean, mean fighting machine. Calcination begins in the base or lead chakra at the sacral cup of the base of the spine. In society, the calcination is expressed in the lives of revolutionaries, conquerors, and other warriors who try to overthrow the status quo. On the planetary level, it is the fire of creation, the formation of a livable environment from molten matter and volcanic ashes. Dissolution is the second major operation in the alchemy of transformation. Chemically, it is the dissolving of the ashes from the calcination in water. In the Arcanum experiment, dissolution is represented by iron oxide or rust, which illustrates the potentially corrosive powers of water on even the hardest of metals. When processed, vitriol breaks down into sulfuric acid and iron oxide, which are the first 2 arcana or secret ingredients. The Egyptians smelted iron as far back as 1500 BCE and used iron compounds in tonics and disinfectants. Psychologically, this represents the further breaking down of the artificial structures of the psyche by total immersion in the unconscious, non-rational, feminine, or rejected parts of our minds. It is, for the most part, an unconscious process in which our conscious minds let go of control and allow the surfacing of buried material. It is the opening of the floodgates and generating new energies from the waters held back. Dissolution can be experienced as flow, the bliss of well-being, and actively engaged in creative acts without traditional prejudices, personal hang-ups, or established hierarchy getting in the way. Physiologically, dissolution is the continuance of the Kundalini experience, the opening up of energy channels in the body to recharge and elevate every single cell. Dissolution takes place in the genital or 10 chakra and involves the lungs and spleen. In society, the process of steady growth through gradual dissolution is examined by agrarian, monastic, or agricultural-based lifestyles. On the planetary level, dissolution is the great flood, the cleansing of the earth of all that is inferior. Separation is the third operation of transformation in alchemy. Chemically, it is the isolation of the components of dissolution by filtration and then discarding any ungenuine or unworthy material. In the Arcanum experiment, separation is represented by the compound sodium carbonate, which separates out of water and appears as white soda ash on dry lake beds. The oldest known deposits are in Egypt. The alchemists sometimes refer to this compound as natron, which means the common tendency in all salts to form solid bodies or precipitates. Psychologically, this is the process of rediscovery of our essence and the reclaiming of dream and visionary gold, previously rejected by the masculine, rational part of our minds. It is, for the most part, a conscious process in which we review formerly hidden material and decide what to discard and what to reintegrate into our refined personality. Much of this shadowy material is things we are ashamed of or were taught to hide away by our parents, churches, and schooling. Separation is the letting go of the self-inflicted restraints to our true nature so we can shine through. Physiologically, separation is the following and controlling the breath in the body as it works with the forces of spirit and soul to give birth to new energy and physical renewal. Separation begins in the navel or iron chakra, located at the level of the solar plexus. In society, separation is expressed as the establishment of clans, cities, and nationalities. Separation on the planetary level is represented by the formation of land masses and islands from the powerful forces of air, water, earth, and fire. Conjunction is the fourth of the 7 operations of alchemy. Chemically, it is the recombination of saved elements from separation into a new substance. In the Arcanum experiment, conjunction is symbolized by a nitrate compound known as cubic saltpeter or potassium nitrate, which the alchemists called natron, or simply salt. Blue-colored natron acid, or aqua fortis, was made by mixing potassium nitrate with sulfuric acid and was used to separate silver from gold. The inert residue precipitated from the acid during the reaction, like a child being born. Psychologically, it is the empowerment of our true selves, the union of both masculine and feminine sides of our personalities into a new belief system or intuitive state of consciousness. The alchemists referred to this as the lesser stone, and after it has been achieved, the adept is able to clearly discern what needs to be done to achieve lasting enlightenment, which is the union over the self, and often synchronicities begin to occur and confirm that the alchemist is on the right track. Physiologically, conjunction is using the body's sexual energies to perform transformation. Conjunction takes place at the level of the heart or copper chakra. In society, it is the growth of crafts and technologies to master the environment. On the planetary level, conjunction occurs when primordial life forms are created from the energies of the sun or lighting. Fermentation is the 5th operation in the alchemy of transformation. Fermentation is the 2-step process that begins with the putrefaction of the hermaphroditic child from the conjunction, resulting in its death and resurrection to a new level of being. The fermentation phase then begins with the introduction of new life into the product of conjunction to strengthen it and ensure its survival. Chemically, the fermentation is the growth of a ferment bacteria in organic solutions, such as occurs in the fermenting of milk to produce curds and cheese, or in fermenting of grapes to make wine. In the Arcanum experiment, the process of fermentation is represented by a compound called liquor hepatis, which is an oily, reddish-brown mixture of ammonia and the rotten egg-smelling compound hydrogen sulfide. Egyptian alchemists made ammonia by heating camel dung in sealed containers and thought of it as kind of a refined mercury that embodied the life force. Liquor hepatis means liquor of the liver, which they believed was the seat of the soul, and the color they associated with the compound was green, the color of bile. Surprisingly, liquor hepatis exudes a wonderful fragrance, and the alchemists made a perfume of it called balsam of the soul. Psychologically, the fermentation process starts with the inspiration of spiritual power from above that reanimates, energizes, and enlightens the alchemist. Out of the blackness of his putrefaction comes the yellow ferment, which appears like a golden wax flowing out of the foul matter of the soul. Its arrival is announced by a brilliant display of colors and meaningful visions called the peacock's tail. Fermentation can be achieved through various activities that include intense prayer, desire for mystical union, breakdown of the personality, transpersonal therapy, psychedelic drugs, and deep meditation. Fermentation is the living inspiration from something that is totally beyond us. Physiologically, fermentation is the rousing of living energy, chi or kundalini, in the body to heal and vivify. It is expressed as the vibratory tones and spoken truths that emerge from the throat or Mercury chakra. In society, the fermentation experience is the basis of religion, and on the planetary level, it is the evolution of life to produce higher states of consciousness. Distillation is the sixth major operation in the alchemy of transformation. Chemically, it is the boiling and condensation of the fermented solution to increase its purity, such as takes place in the distilling of wine to make brandy. In the Arcanum experiment, distillation is represented by a compound known as black pulvis solaris, which is made by mixing black antimony with purified sulfur. The two immediately clump together to make what the alchemists called a bezoar, a kind of sublimated solid that forms in the intestines and the brain. Psychologically, distillation is the agitation and sublimation of psychic forces is necessary to ensure that no impurities from the inflated ego or deeply immersed id are incorporated into the next and final stage. Personal distillation consists of a variety of introspective techniques that raise the content of the psyche to its highest level possible, free from the sentimentality and emotions, cut off from even one's personal identity. Distillation is the purification of the unborn self, all that we truly are and can be. Physiologically, distillation is the raising of the life force repeatedly from the lower regions of the cauldron of the body to the brain, what Oriental alchemists called the circulation of the light, where it eventually becomes a wondrous, solidifying light of power. Distillation is said to culminate in the third eye area of the forehead at the level of the pituitary and pineal gland in the brow or silver chakra. In society, distillation is experienced as a science or objective experimentation. On the planetary level, distillation is the realization of the power of higher love as the life force from the entire planet gradually seeks to become one force in nature based on a shared vision of truth. Coagulation is the seventh and final operation of transformation in alchemy. Chemically, coagulation is the precipitation or sublimation of the purified ferment from distillation. In the Arcanum experiment, coagulation is represented by a compound called red pulvis solaris, which is a reddish-orange powder of pure sulfur mixed with a therapeutic mercury compound, red mercuric oxide. The name pulvis solaris means powder of the sun, and the alchemists believed it could instantly perfect any substance to which it was added. Psychologically, coagulation is first sensed as a new confidence that is beyond all things, though it may be experienced as a second body of golden coalesced light, a permanent vehicle of consciousness that embodies the highest aspirations and evolution of the mind. Coagulation incarnates and releases the ultimate materia of the soul, the astral body, which the alchemists also referred to as the greater or philosopher's stone. Using this magical stone, the alchemists believed that they could exist on all levels of reality. Physiologically, this stage is marked by the release of the elixir in the blood that rejuvenates the body into a perfect vessel of health. A brain ambrosia is said to be released through the interaction of light from the phallic-shaped pineal gland and matter from the vulva of the pituitary. This heavenly food, or viaticum, both nourishes and energizes the cells without any waste products being produced. These physiological and psychological processes create the second body, a body of solid light that emerges through the crown or gold chakra. In society, it is the living wisdom in which everybody exists on the same light of evolved consciousness and knowledge of truth. On a planetary level, coagulation is the return to the Garden of Eden, this time on a higher level in tune with the divine mind.
Most people have a very mistaken view of what alchemy is, based largely upon the caricatures of its enemies and the misunderstandings of the uninformed. The image of the alchemist, as benighted proto-chemist, vainly bent on turning lead into gold, totally misses the point of alchemical thought. It is true, the Western alchemists, like their Chinese counterparts, did work with a variety of substances to try and create various elixirs and arcane effects, including the idea of transmutation of base metals. However, this was a small aspect of alchemy, and to define alchemy by this is like defining Taoism as the search for the elixir of immortality. It misses the real point altogether. In reality, alchemy was and is an advanced spiritual discipline, closely related to modern Wicca in its concepts and images. These concepts and images were presented in largely coded form so that they could be read by the unenlightened as relating to chemistry and physical operations, and by the enlightened as a system of spiritual wisdom. Thus, the true alchemist was not trying to turn ordinary lead into gold, though the casual observer might reasonably think so from how things were presented. Rather, they were striving to turn the lead of an ordinary and undeveloped consciousness into the gold of a fully realized and enlightened soul.
The successful result of the alchemical process was the creation of the philosopher's stone. Like a true symbol, the steps can be applied to many things. It is the process, the machine. What you put into it metaphorically will undergo the archetypal steps if carefully attended by the alchemist and culminate in a higher state, the alchemical gold, charcoal, and a diamond. When we use charcoal as the focus of an alchemical operation, we begin by recognizing that its essential ingredient, carbon, is the materia prima that will emerge perfected as the diamond. When the charcoal undergoes the cleansing fire and a stress of geological proportions, it is hardened into a perfect, impenetrable diamond. It becomes itself the geometric map of perfect universal order, from the highest spiritual registers to the lowest physical realms. The universal order can be seen as the lattice which guides the growth of the vine, as an archetype that guides and supports life on the material plane. While many agents can be introduced into this machine and undergo the archetypal steps to its perfection, the one to which the most closely guarded alchemical allegory and occult law is addressed is consciousness itself. This is the essence of the great work, the application of this special key to this mysterious universal formula. The key directs the alchemical process to the materia prima of our very consciousness, our awareness, ourselves, mental selves, and spiritual selves. Consciousness is the materia prima. While the value of creating alchemical glass or alchemical gold may seem more obvious, one might ask, what is the benefit of applying the alchemical steps to consciousness?
Like modern Wicca, alchemy saw the world as a male-female duality. Alchemical ideas about this duality are strikingly similar to Wiccan ideas about goddess and god. The masculine polarity was thought of as red and fixed, the feminine polarity as white and volatile. The union of these two produced the physical world. The great work, or alchemical marriage, was the quest to unite and transcend this duality. It is the great work, which is often mistakenly described as the quest to transmute base metals. The great work began with what is termed materia prima. This is the ordinary state of being, the lead in the analogy. The great work ended in the creation of the philosopher's stone. This is enlightenment, or the gold of the analogy. The materia prima was considered to have both a masculine and a feminine aspect, which were in opposition within it, until brought into alignment through the great work, hence the term alchemical marriage. The great work has three main parts: the nigredo, the albedo, and finally the rubedo. These correspond to the sacred colors of the Wiccan goddess: black, white, and red. In addition, a fourth stage, called the cauda pavonis, marked the transition between nigredo and albedo. Symbolically, the materia prima was placed into an athanor, or alchemical furnace, which subjected it to steady pressure and reduced it to its constituent parts. This residue was the nigredo, the destruction of preconceived forms considered necessary for new growth to occur. What this really means is that before one can grow spiritually, one must first eliminate old ideas and limitations. As the Zen Buddhists say, only an empty bowl can be filled. Alchemists described this principle through the maxim, "No generation without corruption," an idea similar to the Wiccan "to rise you must fall." New growth cannot take place until the old is cleared away. The nigredo then fermented until at length the cauda pavonis occurred. This was portrayed as a light show of many colors. This means that when we have purified ourselves of old ideas, we may then experience many new ideas, and indeed will at first run riot with them, learning all we can from all sources. During this period, we may in fact be bedazzled or blinded by the newfound light. But through the application of self-control, we can learn to discern what is helpful to our growth and what is merely entertaining. After the cauda pavonis, the subject must be purified, resulting in the albedo. The albedo is a pure and receptive spiritual state. This means that after initial euphoria, a more controlled spiritual growth may unfold, elevating and expanding the consciousness. Finally, after being subjected to pressure again, the albedo becomes activated as the rubedo. What this means is that spiritual knowledge, to be valuable, must be put into practice. No matter how deep the ideas, or how great the abilities, they mean nothing if they are, as Mabel Heikerel once put it, left on a shelf to gather dust. Thus old ideas must first be transcended. Then controlled spiritual growth can lead to spiritual enlightenment, which must be put into practice to be of value. This is, of course, an oversimplification, in that it is the opposite of the alchemist's own tendency, which was to overcomplication. Like the ceremonials, alchemists phrased their writings in intentionally obscure wording, ostensibly to shield their teachings from those they considered unworthy. It also served to shield themselves from persecution by religious fanatics. Alchemists used a rich symbology that included elemental, planetary, and mineral symbolism, as well as a good dose of ancient paganism. One of the principal themes of alchemical symbolism is the union of opposites, which is expressed in many ways throughout alchemical art. Such familiar figures as the four elements, the twin dragons, and the Ouroboros, the great serpent of the universe eating its own tail, were of great importance in alchemy. The masculine principle was likened to the sun and also to sulfur, while the feminine was considered lunar and likened to Mercury. The inner fire, what we today call the eternal flame or the divine spark, was described as a salt. It is this mineral symbolism above all which has led to the idea that alchemy was entirely concerned with protochemistry operations. True, alchemists did engage in such protochemistry operations in the belief that it would shed light on their spiritual operations under the credo, as above, so below, which is a principal pillar of alchemical thought, as of modern Wiccan thought. However, it was a dilettante alchemist who misunderstood the spiritual nature of the teachings and turned instead to chemical operations, not realizing that they were a code for higher knowledge.
Now we can see the big picture coming into focus. Could that spark of consciousness in us all be connected to spiritual enlightenment? And by intense focus on the development of consciousness, could alchemists truly reach these levels? Even modern science is beginning to tell us a great deal about our consciousness and its connection to the rest of the infinite universe. Our knowledge of the power of the human brain has seen great strides in recent years, and possible interactions with certain glands such as the pineal are continually being investigated with many successes. In his groundbreaking book detailing his research, Dr. Rick Strassman outlines his discoveries with the pineal gland and a substance known as dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, while administering the substance to a controlled group of volunteer patients. DMT is the most potent psychedelic known thus far, is highly illegal in nearly everywhere in the world, yet it appears to be produced naturally by our pineal gland during REM stages of sleep, deep meditation, and possibly during fetal development and near-death and death experiences. The patients also reported extremely intense spiritual experiences, many of which were frightened to a fear of death due to its intensity. Could this be the sacred and mysterious, divine nectar-like substance produced in the brain during the latter levels of spiritual enlightenment, as described by the alchemists? These questions have profound implications, as much of this knowledge has been occult or secret, found only in magical and hermetic societies. Millions of Hindus bathe where the sacred Ganges and Juma rivers meet. The scriptures tell how the divine nectar, which is said to confer immortality and everlasting bliss, was once spilled into the rivers during an epic fight between the demons and the gods. They believed that from their scriptured legends, they might be able to thereby speed their way to nirvana and be spared the pain of countless rebirths in man's universe. Amazingly, this appears to be a universal aspiration of the alchemist as well. Many say this substance occurs as the activation of the Ajna chakra, or third eye, takes place. This is where the sun and the moon, the masculine and feminine, right and left brain become balanced and synergistic. This makes sense scientifically, where the brainwave patterns of each hemisphere could create a magnetic field by this balance in the exact location of the pineal, located within the hypothalamus in the center of the brain. Within nearly every culture that has existed, there is a reference to the activation of the third eye, or Ajna chakra. This is no coincidence, but rather something that even science should be inclined to research due to its statistical probability alone. In actuality, there is quite a bit of substantiated evidence of this sacred science being all that it's described as, and more, when one has the keys to its meaning and applies it diligently to their life. Should alchemy continue to be unknown and hidden within the areas such as the Vatican and secret societies who wish to withhold it from mankind? Or should the knowledge and light be given to those that seek, as Prometheus did when he stole the fire from Zeus and gave it to mankind? This is the story of Eden, which tells us of a God that wants mankind to continue just tending to the garden, not to have a consciousness, not to have spirituality, not to be like him. It is our destiny to re-enter Eden, and freely eat from the tree, and drink from the waters of life. As it is written, surely we will not die, but know that which God knows. By this we realize our true nature and divinity. We must understand that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience, not humans trying to have a spiritual experience. It is a diligent alchemist who comes to understand the true nature of reality and become the master, the guru, the teacher in their physical, emotional, and spiritual growth, a master of their own destiny. So what happened to the spiritual aspects of alchemy when modern chemistry and physics became common knowledge of that which concerns matter, following the works of Isaac Newton? Much of the interest in psychological and spiritual aspects of alchemy were nearly forgotten in modern science until the work of Carl Jung, who revolutionized psychology by exposing the relationships between alchemy, Platonism, and modern psychology techniques. In fact, he believed much according to the credo, as above, so below, that one could be understood by understanding the other.
I was always looking for something in between, something that linked that remote past with the present moment. And I found, to my amazement, it is alchemy. It is the basis of our modern way of perceiving things. And therefore, it is as if it were right under the threshold of consciousness. This is a wonderful picture of how the development of archetypes, that means the movement of archetypes, looks, when you look upon them as if from above, maybe from today, you look back into the past and you see how the present would have our past. And we can construct or even predict.
Modern-day philosopher and author Terence McKenna also did a great deal to revive spiritual alchemy and its connection to consciousness and our divine nature, which he consistently reiterated in his many lectures.
Everything occurs in the presence of its opposite, and out of that there is generated the friction, the heat, and the light that all comes together in an indissoluble package as part of life. So what I want to talk to you about tonight, and how it relates to unfolding the stone, is the notion of alchemy, of all things. Alchemy, as I'm sure many of you know, is really the secret tradition of the redemption of spirit from matter. But many of you may imagine that alchemy is simply a discredited pre-scientific obsession of unbalanced minds interested in changing base metals into gold, lead into the stuff of commerce. This is the benighted reputation that alchemy has acquired in a century so given over to the literal and the material and the non-spiritual that it's lost all touch with the adumbrations of meaning that vibrate behind the perceptions of the alchemists. The central conception of alchemy is the conception of the philosopher's stone. What is it? It's the universal panacea at the end of time. It's the chocolate cake that your mother made once a week when you were a child. The panis supersubstantialis. It's all things to all men and all women. If you are hungry, you eat it. If you're dirty, you shower under it. If you need to go somewhere, you sit on it and you fly there. If you have a question, it answers it. It's something that the human mind senses in itself and related to, invoked, worshipped over centuries before the slow rise of the patriarchy and rationalism and materialism turned it into a myth, a fairy tale. It is not a myth or a fairy tale. It is the burning primary reality that lies behind the dross of appearances. Alchemy is based on a philosophy called Hermeticism that was developed in the 1st and 2nd centuries by Gnostic thinkers, Greeks, Jews, people inside the Roman Empire as it was beginning to show the first signs of degradation and decay, who felt a profound disaffection with their world, a disaffection that on the scale of those times was as profound as our own existential disaffection. And the Hermetic philosophers drew back from the rise of Christianity with its doctrine of the fall of man and original sin and the stain of Adam and Eve and that whole thing, and took a different tack and made 2 points which I think we need to recover and live out for ourselves. And the first point was that man, which means men and women, human beings, are divine beings, not lower than the angels, higher than the angels. The message of the alchemical and hermetic thinkers, and the Corpus Hermeticum actually uses the phrase, man is God's brother, we have no idea what it would mean in our own lives if we could throw off the notion of ourselves as fallen beings. We are not fallen beings. When you take into your life the gnosis of the light-filled vegetables, the psychedelic plants that have stabilized the sane societies of this world for millennia, the first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms. The second point that these philosophers wanted to make was that fate can be overcome. Fate can be overcome. Now, for the Greco-Hellenic world, what that meant was the starry engines of the machinery of fate that they saw strewn across the night sky, because they were intensely aware of the power of the zodiac, the stellar shells inhabited by demons that extended out to the unimaginable imperium of the All-Father that was beyond fate. And into that world of astrological fatedness, which is such a strong idea for the Greek mind, the Hermeticists announced fate can be overcome. And they had a novel answer for how this could be done. It can be done through magic, a word not often enough heard in the present world. The overcoming of fate is achieved through magic, and then the stellar machinery becomes not an invasive force into one's life, but an empowering force. Now, some of us may believe in astrology and some of us may not. We are all strongly influenced by the notion of fate, of our powerlessness in an existential world. Jean-Paul Sartre said nature is mute, and we, embedded in the media-dense, message-dense, programming-dense matrix of these hyper-societies that we have created, often feel, I think, like hapless atoms, running endlessly according to the blueprints and programs of unseen masters, whether it's the banking industry, Madison Avenue, whoever. We tend to disempower ourselves. We tend to believe that we don't matter. And in the act of taking that idea to ourselves, we give everything away to somebody else, to something else. So the rebirth of a sense of the stone and its possibility within each of us entails these two ideas: our divinity and our power to overcome fate. There is no inevitability in our lives unless we submit to the idea of inevitability and then give ourselves over to it.
The practice of transcending time and consciousness was also very prevalent in South America, with the Maya in particular, where clocks of stone were designed, created, and heavily used for the purposes of conquering time and consciousness. This also seems to be closely associated with the detailed understanding of astrology and how the earthly realm and spirit realm are connected. Needless to say, the universal truths found in the path of alchemy are deeply embedded in some way into almost every culture. Many say that this information presented to you here should not be told to those who aren't chosen, so to speak, or initiated into a fraternal order which guards it and holds it over the heads of its members, feeding them a diluted version, a little here and a little there. However, this is a crumbling ideology, and it is our belief that we are all chosen, and many of us simply have yet to realize our universal calling. In later films, we will discuss this and a variety of other subjects in more detail as to the history and practical application in these areas. We hope that you have enjoyed this film and that it has cleared up some of the misconceptions about this very sacred science, the great work, in Alchemy, Sacred Secrets Revealed.
it's Jared from Drumeo, and today I'm going to teach you how to play the drums. Now, I'm not going to assume
And now we move into the realms of the union of spirit and matter. It's time to make our divided selves whole again. Separate the earth from the fire. Solve coagula. In alchemy, we have a very sacred science for bringing the lead of an undeveloped consciousness up to the level of a fully developed consciousness of gold, magnificent and incorruptible. In this, one can see past the allegory of symbols and cryptic artwork commonly associated with alchemy. The great work is filled with some of the most spectacular symbolism ever created and seen in our time. Deciphering them and applying them to ourselves displays one of the greatest secrets ever to be revealed. In previous films, we have examined the basic principles of alchemy, which would be expanded on in greater detail here. One of the most important symbols in alchemy is that of the Philosopher's Stone. While it may not be as well known, its significance cannot be taken lightly. The symbol of the stone can be used as a key in order to aid in the decrypting of alchemical imagery and lend meaning to many other symbols. The stone itself, in many ways, is indeed a key. But what exactly is the meaning of this symbol? The generally accepted explanation seems to be that of describing the relationship between the physical and spiritual realms, and our part in that relationship. In the stone, we can be seen as a divine being encased in matter, with the intent of performing work on the physical plane. This work is nothing short of being able to exist beyond the material world. A consciousness perfected as a stone, by doing the work needed to achieve it, the great work. By working with the constituent parts represented by this symbol, and bring them together as a whole, we come into union with that which is the whole, the one. We will now go through some basic aspects to understand the process of the great work, which began with the one, or as it's sometimes referred to as, the all. Please take note as we begin. This is not about religion or established dogma or creed. This is about advanced spiritual science, pure and simple. Therefore, when we mention the one or the all, it may or may not be directly referring to deity, but rather to the creative force which encompasses all that is and is not. The one is everything, every potentiality, every outcome. It is the divine principle and prima materia. The one is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of the great work, and in this is sometimes represented by the Ouroboros. This is one of the most perplexing and fulfilling aspects to fully understand, and many of us spend a lifetime attempting to do so. In this principle, we examine the concept of duality. In alchemy, we see what is perhaps one of the most easily understood. Sun and the Moon, or Sol and Luna, Sulfur and Mercury, or the Red King and the White Queen. This is found throughout that entire attempt to describe the law of opposites: male, female, light, dark, active, passive, and high and low. In Eastern traditions, we see this as yin and yang of the Tao. Surely, aspects of the nature of duality are no accident or coincidence. These are sometimes represented in alchemical imagery as two opposing dragons. One is winged or volatile, one is wingless or fixed. Although we have opposing forces that represent separation, they seek union, and to be in balance and harmony. For the alchemist, they strive to reconcile these differences within themselves and create this union. This is done through a process known as solvate coagula, to separate the pure from the impure, the subtle from the gross in the emerald tablet. When done properly and in sufficient repetition, the two can come together perfected as one. This is represented as the perfect matter in the androgyne, or hermaphrodite in alchemical imagery. Alchemists see this principle as tria prima, or the three primes. These are mercury, sulfur, and salt, or spirit, soul, and body. When the two opposing principles of sulfur, masculine, and mercury, feminine, come together, we get the salt or body, which brings together and reconciles these opposing principles within it in order to exist on the material plane in physical form. In the great work, the alchemists work with the three primes in the same process spoke of earlier, solvate coagula, which is interpreted as dissolve and coagulate. This dissolving is done to free the soul and body, or sulfur and salt, using mercury or spirit. In this way, the soul and body can be calcined or purified, and rejoined or bound with spirit, making it one again, free from imperfections. All things which exist contain these three principles. The four commonly known aspects are fire, water, air, and earth as elements, which correspond to the current scientific knowledge of plasma, liquids, gas, and solids. In Kabbalah, these are known as Yod, He, Vav, He, or Jehovah. The fire is our will, the life force or chi as it is seen in Eastern traditions. The water is our emotions, and describes how they can easily flow from one temperature to the next, when not under control. The air is our intellect, and the earth is our body, or matter here on the material plane. These four aspects encompass many things, and can be used to easily identify areas of our personality which needs refined and how. Balance between these aspects is the key, and when one aspect is lacking, it can be balanced with another as an opposite, capable of refraining from one extreme of the spectrum. In alchemy, the concept of spirit is seen of having great importance. It is viewed as the fifth of the original four. Modern science at some points accepts this concept and views the fifth element to be what is known as ether, whereas the alchemist knows this element as the quintessence. The quintessence is not only the glue which binds all elements together, it is also seen as what keeps the elements independent of each other. In Kabbalah, this is also known as Shin, which has a quality of fire, and is generally placed right in the middle as Yod, He, Shin, Vav, He. Now that we have reviewed some of the basic alchemical concepts, let's move on and delve deeper into the process. Although alchemical processes can be applied to a variety of things, this film is primarily focused on the alchemist, him or herself, being the experiment. This is solidified under the credo, as above, so below, which is essentially describing the relationship of the macrocosm to the microcosm. Consider sacred geometry using the Fibonacci series, which produces the same shape in both pine cones and galaxies. With this, the alchemist can work with things on the material plane and learn more about the properties of the spiritual plane, or vice versa. The great work begins in the stage known as nigredo, or the blackness. With our consciousness as the prima materia is where we find ourselves in the current condition, as the lead in the alchemical allegory. With spirit, we can dissolve and place our prima materia into the athanor or chemical furnace, and begin the calcination process, and eliminate any energies which may be blocking growth. Nigredo can be a very powerful stage, as it often signifies a point in one's life where a spiritual evolution is necessary or imminent. It is unfortunate, however, knowing that the material plane cannot fulfill, and the seeking of spiritual truth is an inevitable and required event. In the illustration, take note of the black crow or raven in the setting, signifying undergoing the stage of Nigredo. This is a very personal time, where you may begin to look deep into the soul, no matter how uncomfortable it may be at first. There is some debate about if the next stage, known as the Cauda Pavones or the Peacock's Tail, is actually placed after Albedo or Nigredo. Perhaps it may be different for some individuals. However, for the purposes of this discussion, we will describe this stage here. Out of the whiteness, clarity begins to occur, and the alchemist can experience all of the aspects of the whiteness as one because unity is found. As Isaac Newton showed us with his prism work, that whiteness that enters from above and can be broken down and seen in all of its brilliant display of colors. We, as divine beings, are the prism. This may be a euphoric experience for the alchemist, as new energies and knowledge not previously experienced come into play. When the peacock's tail emerges and the discipline is established, it signifies the alchemist is entering the next stage, known as albedo. To experience and understand the following stage, known as albedo, one generally must have fully immersed in nigredo, having looked deep within themselves. The source of all existence appears through the void and is seen as a whiteness or a bright light. This occurs due to the understanding of unity in all polarities and is seen as the one. In this, the alchemist knows the source from which everything sprang and is aware of the real beauty of the spiritual path in becoming this unification once again. As was mentioned earlier concerning the two opposing forces, this can be seen as the hermaphrodite or Mercury, which is spirit. Spirit has no gender. As albedo continues, spirit begins to coagulate with matter, and the volatile is becoming fixed. This is done when our conscious mind peers deep into the subconscious and brings it back to the conscious mind to be observed. Spirit is entering the soul, purifying and coagulating to become solidified and constant in our life. This is when we actually begin to work with spirit and put to action on the material plane, culminating in the formation of the diamond body. Similar to the resurrection of Christ, this can be seen as a solid body, purified, corruptible. These have merely been brief descriptions of alchemical stages one may experience on their path, and is primarily intended for providing reference for further material at a later time. Hopefully this has given an adequate review for some, and a summary for others. Some of you are practicing alchemists, and some of you have only just discovered the art. One of the most beautiful aspects of alchemy is that it doesn't matter what stage of development you are currently experiencing. It will take your temperature and prescribe you a most relevant remedy. At this time, it is appropriate to mention one of the reasons for secrecy in this sacred art. If you are seriously considering undertaking the great work, please keep in mind that this is not a journey for the weary. One should take into account the things being said here for developing in a healthy and balanced way. This is important for several reasons, especially of which concerns your health and the health of others. If you are not ready to face what may be sitting dormant in your subconscious, then you should proceed with caution, as they will without a doubt emerge through the alchemical process. Alchemy is able to take you where you need to go, but you need to be ready to go there and confront them once and for all. This may seem trivial at first, but it needed to be said so there can be understanding of the road ahead. Until you are well versed in the creation of elixirs and medicine, do not ingest or have others ingest what you have created. This even includes what may be seen as a harmless herb used in plant alchemy, for example. Some of them may have negative effects if used improperly. It is important that you are entering your study of alchemy with the proper intentions. Do not be seeking after material treasures, social status, or psychic abilities. Come to alchemy with an open mind, an open heart, and open hands, free from any actions, and allow the natural process to reveal and unfold for you. One of the fundamental aspects of where your journey begins is with observation, which is your complete attention on your thoughts, on your feelings, and on your actions. Begin just by placing your total attention on what you are thinking right now, on what you are feeling right now, or what you are doing right now. Start with one at a time, and don't place too much emphasis on accomplishing all three at once, as they are also helping you determine which one of the three you are most receptive to. What is most important is the length of time you are able to keep your attention on a thought or feeling, even to the point where you are observing the transition from one thought to another. These are key moments, as they are frequently a time when attention is broken. Learn to notice signs that the attention is falling away, and bring your conscious mind back to observing that thought or feeling. Now is the time to be honest with yourself, or there will be little growth. The purpose of observation is increased self-awareness. While its benefits are obvious, you are about to be aware of all aspects, and that frequently means things that you do not like about a thought, feeling, or action. Try to notice if it's originating from the self or the ego. Is it a need or is it a want? Now that your full attention is placed on it, as difficult as it may sound, accept it, embrace it, and view it from an outward perspective. This is what separates everyday life with alchemy, which you are aware and you plan to take action upon it. An alchemist should always welcome these energies, find an alternative energy to give it new form, and transmute it through an opposing principle. This is where the recognition and utilization of archetypes can be beneficial, as you will soon be met with resistance to changes you know are beneficial to the self. This resistance occurs from the ego. This may be one of the first times that you have allowed illumination of consciousness onto your ego personality, and as you can imagine, it is beginning to feel a bit threatened. The ego is a survival mechanism which is built in. It does feel it has its best intentions in mind. Develop your ego so that it becomes flexible and allows itself to be molded by your conscious input from the self as well. To assist in the transmutation is an archetype which represents a principle of opposition. A process known as sublimation, you will connect your internal opposing principles together in order to change or transmute one energy signature to another. Aspects of your personality have a polar opposite. Especially for new initiates, an opposing principle has the ability to efficiently provide balance. More advanced or strong-willed alchemists may have the ability to transmute directly through the application of fire or will. You may have heard of this in different terms by others who may employ it, sometimes even for financial gain. The names they frequently go by are neurolinguistic and neuroassociative programming, the secret, or something similar. But they all employ one idea that has been utilized for millennia. Thoughts, feelings, and actions can be interrupted and replaced with a more favorable alternative. The most efficient means of accomplishing this is through a polar opposite. So where there is fear, love would be the appropriate balance. This is your dragon, the opposing principle of the self, your ego personality. Does this archetype have conscious illumination? Does it integrate with the will of the self and of cosmic consciousness? This fire-breathing dragon must be observed and worked with in order to share in the will of the self and rescue the white-dressed woman from capture, letting the pure water flow freely. The tale of this allegorical process tell of the situation at hand, as well as the method for handling it, through conscious integration and balance of the polar opposites. Deep within this stage or process, your internal soulmate appears. In Jungian psychology, this is known as the anima for males and the animus for females. Not only is this opposite a perfect example of your opposite sex, it also represents areas and aspects within you considered to be only for the opposite sex. This may represent certain types of thoughts, feelings, or actions you may be internally ashamed of if recognized or exposed. It should be noted how important this aspect of alchemy is for your continued achievement, that you are able to balance a thought, feeling, or action against its polar opposite and reconcile between them equally to share of their cooperation, influence, and contribution.
Now, The archetype is a force, it has an autonomy. It can suddenly seize you. It is like a seizure.
Yes.
So, for instance, falling in love at first sight, that is such a case. You see, you have a certain image in yourself without knowing it of the woman, of the woman.
Yes.
Now you see that girl, or at least a good imitation of your type.
Yes.
And instantly you get a seizure and you're gone.
Yes.
And afterwards you may discover that it was a hell of a mistake. Or you see, a man is quite capable, or he's intelligent enough to see that that woman of his choice, as one says, not no choice, he has been captured.
Yeah.
You know, he sees that she is no good at all, that she is a so, and he said, for God's sake, doctor, help me to get rid of that woman. He can't. He's like clay in her fingers. And that is the archetype. That is so-called archetype of the animal.
Yes.
He thinks it is all his soul. Well, now that is a bit complicated, you know. Archetypal form expressing the fact that a man has a minority of feminine or female genes.
Yeah.
And that is something that doesn't disappear in him. That is constantly present. And it works as a female in a man. Therefore, already in the 16th century, the humanists have to see that each man carries his female with himself, they say.
Yes.
If you are having issues properly visualizing and bringing in the needed archetypes into your conscious illumination, try to observe your state of mind and determine if it needs adjustment. It is best to have a steady mind when working with alchemy, as well as mental focus. If you find it difficult to attain this, try this simple exercise. Begin by focusing on your breath. Do not try to change it, and just observe your breathing as natural and automatic. Begin to count your breaths for as long as possible. When you notice that you have stopped counting, start over. This can be applied to several methods, so you are encouraged to get creative with it, with the point of exercising the intellectual faculties and maintaining focus. You will be able to count to a very high number and even be able to perform other tasks easily while continuing. Let's begin to address some of the things which will begin to occur within the energy system or subtle body of the alchemist. Alchemy is a lot like yoga in its perception of the energy structures of mankind, as well as methods to bring balance to these centers and increase the energy flow among them. Probably the most well-known symbol depicting the energy channels of Sol and Luna is the caduceus. This symbol has carried itself and its meaning throughout civilization for at least 5,000 years. The two opposing serpents represent the dual nature of subtle energies on the material plane, as spoke of earlier, with us being represented in the center as a display of this reconciliation between them. In the East, we see an identical representation in the Ida and Pingala, the two subtle energy channels recognized in yoga. Notice again, we have the center pillar, only this time it is known as Shushumna. In addition to alchemy, the West has an additional corresponding system in Kabbalah, where we have the left, right, and middle pillar. These two can...
Come on, fuck off, don't do this.
As the energy rises naturally and begins to flow uninhibited, the perfect matrimony can occur.
Fucking thing.
Spiritual alchemy, which is done primarily through the application of heat, fire, or shin. As the energy rises naturally and begins to flow uninhibited, the perfect matrimony can occur, and is all about the mystical union. As you can see from the chart, the middle pillar stands as your mode of balance between forces. If you are male, balance your fire with water, and you will be air. And for females, balance your water with fire, and you will be air. In the elementals, when fire and water combine, you have air or vapor. Taking this path up the tree is the middle path. Not the left hand, not the right hand, but working in balance with the forces of nature and creation. All paths eventually lead to one destination. However, taking one polarized path can lead one through vices, hardened materialism, and thorns, while taking another polarized path can lead one through the clouds, high above and forgetting the importance or even some cases, even hating or despising our material existence. One who is watery in nature may have a difficult time with intellect, and one who is fiery in nature may have a difficult time with emotions. The middle path allows one to walk with their head in the clouds, with their feet planted firmly on the ground. This is a highly spiritual nature, with grounded understanding of the importance of who we are and why we are here. This is a perfected union of spirit, volatile, and matter, fixed, often depicted by the androgyne or hermaphrodite. Depictions of this is also seen in the tarot, as the High Priestess, which corresponds to the hidden sphere of Thoth on the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. Notice she is holding the Torah in her hands. In esoteric philosophy, the one became two in a mystical act of expansion and expression, the law of opposites and dynamic tension of the created universe. Yet we also see countless observations of the importance of making the two into one, a return to the source and its nature of being in pure and unconditional love. All duality seeks union, conscious or not, and this was an original intention of separation itself. As energy begins to move back upwards, we see an amplitude increase in the active current begin to take place in our energy channels. With this current increasing in both strength and frequency, known aspects of biological science can now be observed. Let's take this opportunity to actually look at some science taking place, in hopes that we can gain a more rounded understanding of the process. Moving charges or currents produce magnetic fields. A constant current produces a constant magnetic field, while a changing current produces a changing field. We can go the other way and use a magnetic field to produce a changing current, as long as the magnetic field is changing. This is what induced EMF is all about. A steady changing magnetic field can induce a constant voltage, while an oscillating magnetic field can induce an oscillating voltage. We should keep in mind these two facts. An oscillating electric field generates an oscillating magnetic field. An oscillating magnetic field generates an oscillating electric field. These 2 points are the key to understanding electromagnetic waves. An electromagnetic wave, such as a radio wave, propagates outward from the source at the speed of light. This means in practice that the source has created oscillating electric and magnetic fields perpendicular to each other that travel away from the source. The E and B fields, along with being perpendicular to each other, are perpendicular to the direction that the wave travels, meaning that an electromagnetic wave is a transverse wave. The energy of the wave is stored in the electric and magnetic fields. As human beings, we have a polarized nervous system, known as the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. It is a closed-loop electrical system to carry signals to and from the brain, other organs, and glands. As we have just learned, an oscillating current creates oscillating magnetic waves, and a constant current creates constant magnetic waves. This electrical system is dipole. Like a magnet itself, the field maintains a similar shape to what we see with iron filing experiments, a torus-shaped electromagnetic field. Being grounded can therefore have an even more literal meaning, as attaching an energy channel's ground will complete the circuit, allowing for current and frequency of the wave to take shape. Just above the nervous system is found the pineal, which has a positive polarity, and the pituitary, which is negative. Once sufficient signal amplitude and activity level is reached in the nervous system, the EM waves of these two glands overlap. This creates a closed circuit between them, and in return, another torus-shaped electromagnetic field, which is the Ajna chakra, or third eye. This brings ethereal energy into a sense organ not normally stimulated in such a manner, and increases the sensitivity and reception to the frequencies now available. Theories have begun to arise about the electromagnetic field of consciousness, and how it is connected to our physical body. There even seems to be some consensus in the scientific community as to these claims. If it is true that our consciousness is electromagnetic in nature, it will enable science to move forward into the research of metaphysics. In consideration of this discussion, why is all of this important to alchemy? Something occurs within the alchemist at a certain realization that we actually have the ability to manipulate the reality around us, even if in a subtle way, perhaps even by affecting the reality on the smallest of scales. Today, these phenomena are known in quantum mechanics to be a multitude of potential outcomes in relation to a system of observable probability. In scientific terms, it's called quantum indeterminacy. In 1937, an alchemist named Fulcanelli said, "All the same, I can say this. You will not be aware that in present-day official science, the part played by the observer becomes more and more important. Relativity, the principles of indeterminacy, demonstrates to the extent at which the observer today intervenes in all these phenomena." Fulcanelli was without a doubt speaking of the aspects we see in quantum physics today as being verifiable. Much of the talk today seems to validate what the alchemist did, especially in regards to higher consciousness. As you can see from the images, the higher the frequency of the EM waves, the more it is harmonic and resonates with the atomic nuclei and beyond into quantum levels. This is where all the magic happens in quantum mechanics. There are particles which seem to come in and out of existence, or transform seamlessly to and from a wave. It appears when consciousness is powered by a fully active subtle body system that it has more effect on quantum indeterminacy. We indeed may be on the very brink of lending scientific credence to what has long been held to the alchemist or similar traditions, that the observer, or the alchemist in this case, can affect the outcomes on a quantum level. The process thus far has been all about self-awareness, which continues in its development as albedo moves into rubedo, and the consciousness which was originally volatile is becoming fixed. The etheric body is starting to be transmuted into the full light body. The flame of self-awareness is beginning to move down through the head into the middle and lower centers. Depending on a particular alchemical path, your focus may have been for it to enter the heart, and then the etheric rose comes back out of the heart center and enters the head center, illuminating the area between the pineal and the pituitary. This is one of several similarities between Christian and Rosicrucian traditions, when the focus of self-awareness occurs through the opening of the heart with unconditional love. This is a devotional path. For many traditions in the East, the path generally has more to do with the hands, or actions. We see this in aspects of karma, and the proper action can help to aid in the free flow of energy through the channels once again. These make up the three major energy centers worked with in most traditions. Even though some may have more prominence than others, nearly all have the goal of bringing in etheric energy and illuminating all of the centers eventually. When you have done your work with the needed effectiveness and sufficient energy passes through these centers, the blackness turns to whiteness, and you have entered albedo and are entering the unity of the self, finally becoming whole. It was mentioned previously that consciousness could very well be electromagnetic in nature and could explain why the etheric body is charged when more energy is allowed to flow freely. This may also be responsible for not only what is known as auras to be more visible, but also allow one to see others' auras more clearly when taken into account the Ajna chakra. As the etheric body makes up our consciousness, it is affected by these changes in a most spectacular way. Lucid dreaming, astral travel, and OBEs may become very frequent occurrences. Your consciousness is energizing and solidifying, becoming intricate, complex, and literally hardening into a stone. This stone is the key few are blessed enough to find each century, for it unlocks all doors. The ability to move the consciousness into the light body is a fundamental aspect of the Philosopher's Stone, and is steeped and cloaked in the mysteries of eternal life. Because the consciousness is hardened into a stone, body of pure light, as the original physical body may fail, the self-awareness is eternal. This is the stone, in all of its glory. It is the holy grail so many seek out with their heart. If you recall when we discussed the symbol of this elusive stone, we spoke of it being able to help a new initiate in decoding the alchemical imagery. Very quickly, you will gain an inner knowing of the different symbols and their meanings. However, an intellectual understanding lays an important groundwork for making associations in the consciousness. As you are most likely beginning to notice, the knowledge of the process and the imagery display an unmatched form of communicating details of such a subtle and spiritual science. The entire process is summed up with one image, and it's doing its very best to describe a result. Describing what occurs when one gains the stone is not possible with human words or functions. However, it can be experienced on a personal level in a way that could never be spoken or written about. Your journey began in the blackness of Nigredo, yet here you are, having allowed your spirit to dissolve and then coagulate until albedo has given way to rebedo, the redness. This is nearly the completion of the great work, and the opposing principles within you are fully reconciled. Do not be surprised or worried if you take a step back along the way. In most cases, it is for the better, and passing through these stages is much easier the second time. After you have reached this point, remember, one door opens many, and although your journey has required endurance, there is something major at the forefront of your soul and consciousness. The journey is not over. There's still one union that makes up the true purpose of them all, and is the completion of this alchemical genesis. It is now time to come full circle and experience the true source of all, and return to it when it's time. The union of opposing principles within you is only part of the reason of our existence, and is a stepping stone for fulfilling it to its entirety. The mystical union of opposites between the personal and cosmic scale, that is to say the microcosm and macrocosm, is none other than the self and the one. As above, so below. We see this process occur all the way down to the atomic level. In physics, it's what is known as covalent bonding, where elementals may combine due to deficiencies that each have. In addition to the previous discussion, we wanted to also provide a safe and reliable manner to get started with laboratory work on the physical plane, serving to strengthen the bond that you are laying down in the subconscious. Just try to remember, you are having to deprogram aspects that have been solidified or latent since around the time you were given a name. So performing laboratory work is a very beneficial way to ensure that the messages are making it to the needed faculties. There are a couple types of physical alchemy to work with, as well as many methods. For the purposes discussed here, we will not be going into any advanced work. It would require a great deal of precautions and go beyond the current scope of things. In what is known as mineral alchemy, you have what correlates to the advanced stages of alchemy, known as the great work. You should begin with the physical work which is relevant to where you are at this time, otherwise it will be far less effective. In the beginning of our journey, we have what is known as the lesser work, in which we begin to work with plant alchemy in the area of spiritual and physical medicine called spagyrics. These are the beginning stages of the physical work that is to be performed on the physical plane as experiments. As in quantum physics, where we are increasingly seeing the role that the observer plays in scientific experiments, so we also have with alchemy, where the alchemists themselves are seen with great importance to their experiments. In fact, this is what separates the creation of an elixir from that of merely a tincture, which can be found at many health food stores. It is this interaction with the subtle energies of the alchemist which greatly adds to an elixir's spiritual and medicinal benefit. Remember the motto Solvate Coagula. This is put into practice here. The plant or herb used contains the dual nature, its soul or essence, and its body or matter. You will use or add spirit, in this case alcohol, to separate them for purification and later to hold them together when coagulated. In the creation of a true and basic elixir in plant alchemy, you will do the following. But first, you will need some materials to get started. A mortar and pestle, or something similar, for grinding the herb. 1 ounce of the herb of your choice, according to the qualities of healing you are creating the elixir for. For example, the sun, you will use an herb that is ruled by the sun. An 8-ounce jar, such as a mason jar. A bottle of grain alcohol, high-fruit vodka for separation. A glass pan for calcination. A fine filter for separation of the liquid from the plant matter. Coffee filters will do. A funnel will also make the transfer for the solution easy. And a bottle, preferably with a dropper, for dispensing the elixir. When you are ready to begin, read through the following steps several times and familiarize yourself with them. This is also done to enter a certain mind state for the metaphysical operations you are about to undertake. Let's say you are creating an elixir with solar properties. Begin first with a prayer or meditation on the qualities of the solar principle, and ask that these qualities may be perfected in you through your experiment. Hold this state and begin. Take an herb which is ruled by the sun, such as eyebright, during the day ruled by the sun, which is Sunday, and during an hour ruled by the sun, and place the herb in a mortar and pestle. Begin to grind down the herb to a fine powder, meditating on your salt or body being used for the work. Your soul is being used for your intent, and are being blended with the energies of the herb through your work. At the same time, the process and vice versa is being done to you, the union of both yourself and the herb with its qualities. When the herb is a powder, it is now ready for efficient extraction. Take the powder and place it in a jar, pouring an equal amount of alcohol into the jar while meditating on the fact that you are causing separation of the soul from the body of the herb, while at the same thing is happening to you so that the soul and body can be purified. Shake vigorously and cover the top of the jar with plastic wrap, then screw down the lid around the wrap. This forms a tight seal and ensures that the vapor does not come in contact with any metal. You can also use rubber bands if no lids are available. Place the solution somewhere away from sunlight and allow sitting for at least 2 weeks, or even better, use the alchemist month of 40 days. Switch the jar around every few days to ensure proper penetration of the spirit being used. After sufficient time has passed, the soul of the herb will be fully dissolved and suspended in spirit, and the dead matter or caput mortem can now be separated and purified as a salt. Place the filter into a funnel or use the corner of a plastic bag and begin to pour the solution out of the jar and into a bottle. To be the most efficient, you may want to place the soaked plant material into the filter and wring out any remaining solution. The solution should be a dark color, with most of the bright green color having faded away, the impurities left behind of the soul and the matter. Be sure to properly label your elixir and then store away from sunlight. You now have a solution of the plant soul suspended in spirit, and it is time to perform calcination. This is done in order to purify the salt or body so it can be rejoined with its soul. Throughout this process, you have been closely observing the stages that spirit, soul, and body have been working with the plant. Through resonance, you are attuning to these stages yourself with your subtle energy. At the same time work is being performed below, it is being done above as well. Remember, you are in nigredo and beginning to look at the constituent parts of the whole individually. To begin the next stage, it is good to have adequate ventilation, or even better, perform the task outdoors as smoke will be created. On the appropriate ruling day and hour of the herb, put the soaked plant material on a fire-safe glass pan or similar container. Then place your fire or will on the matter. The spirit will act as a fuel and ignite the calcination process, quickly blackening the matter. Meditate on the aspect of placing your consciousness on your impurities. Stir occasionally with a metal rod or butter knife until the spirit has burned off and the matter is dry and blackened. You may see small spots of whiteness and purity beginning to appear. Take the blackened matter and place it in your mortar and pestle, grinding the salts to a fine powder and breaking it down further into its parts. Place the powder back in the pan and drip a small amount of spirit or alcohol on it and place fire against it again, allowing it to calcine as before. Repeat this process as needed until the powder has become as white as possible. Observe closely during the calcination process and meditate on our previous discussion concerning applying heat to ourselves. This helps burn off impurities of the soul and body during nigredo, until we begin to see the whiteness appear through the blackness and enter albedo. The pure white salts can now be stored away from sunlight and are ready to use. Again, be sure to label appropriately. If you are ready to complete the process and begin taking your elixir, begin on the ruling day and hour for the herb being used in the elixir, and place a pinch of the salts in a spoon. Use the dropper to soak the salts with the soul or essence of the herb, and the spirit will coagulate the soul and body to recombine, completely purified. Meditate for a moment concerning the completion of this process being done. You have brought it from the beginning to this point over the past couple weeks, and have captured the process into a consumable talisman to take in its subtle energies. You can now take the elixir. In all likelihood, you will not see any effects of the talisman at first. Alchemical or spagyric tinctures are very subtle. You will see the benefits quickly of anything related to the physical properties of the herb being used. However, the spiritual properties may begin to manifest in other areas, such as meditation or dream states first. The important thing to note is that you have fully begun the appropriate process for initiation and started to awaken your subtle faculties. To help you develop in a balanced way, it is suggested that you create an appropriate tincture for each day of the 7 days prior to beginning taking them. This is most easily done by having all of your supplies together and creating them one per day, each day, beginning with Sunday. As stated previously, you should have a working knowledge of the herbs you plan to use in your elixir. If you would like to get started with the ones shown here, which are safe unless you are pregnant or nursing, their names are as follows. Eyebright, a memory aid and anti-inflammatory. Watercress, an antioxidant, an expectorant, and digestive aid. Watercress also has anti-angiogenic and cancer-suppressing properties. Basil, an antioxidant, anti-cancer, antiviral, and antimicrobial. Basil also reduces platelet aggregation. Fennel, a gastrointestinal tonic and anti-flatulent. Lemon balm, an antibacterial and antiviral. Passion flower, a sedative and analgesic. And horsetail, an antioxidant. As you can see, aside from the subtle and etheric effects on your consciousness, you have something quite amazing in the physical properties of these herbs. One can clearly see the benefits of this particular selection and how the ruling planets balance out the effects and create a truly synergistic medicinal framework.
Yeah, we changed your show.
It is recommended to go ahead and begin the creation of tinctures when you start the process spoke of earlier. When you are working with laboratory alchemy, such as in the creation of tinctures and elixirs, it is very important to bring into conscious focus the spiritual work being done. At the same time, when you are working on inner development, try to also focus on the work needing to be done on the material plane. The inner and outer work are to coincide with each other. Keeping this aspect in mind will aid in the ability to experience a mystical union. As above, so below, this correlation will never falter. Keep in mind that we have only gone into detail concerning the initial stages, and there is much more to learn about the great work. It is simply too extensive to cover in one setting, nor would it be beneficial. Alchemy, as well as alchemical aspects of similar traditions, is all about the process, and this rings true in nearly every area of the art. The great work is just that. Many times is a lifelong pursuit, and is written about by the many who have come before, describing its level of commitment. As the ageless alchemical motto reveals, pray, study, read, and read. It is our hope that we have at least provided somewhat of a systematic approach to spiritual alchemy, and provided some of the tools needed to begin in the great work. You have learned a few of the key steps to begin working in the art, and how you can utilize it on a practical basis. As we move towards the mystical union, we see the true beauty that alchemy is in its wholeness and essence. Will you take up the challenge that alchemy presents to you? The world needs more individuals rising to the occasion to transmute themselves to a higher form of existence, and to help others do the same in whatever capacity possible. A skilled alchemist can transmute within their sphere of influence. However, many of us can truly perform a global transmutation through application of spiritual alchemy on a larger scale. Therefore, remember, as we grow on our journey and our path, let's try to always be in service of each other at the same time, and we will all grow together.
In this way, the initiation into adeptship begins in Philosopher's, and this is a dangerous time. The power of all four elements united suddenly gives the individual the ability to make change and influence people with little effort. The result may be a string of successes that lead to the most common kind of self-esteem-faction based on circumstances. It can be a lovely, intoxicating time. But beware, because the truly enlightened being does not depend on circumstance for happiness. Be mindful. It is best to assume that you have not attained the illumination of adeptship yet, even if you have. Philosopher's trade heralds a time, personal power and success. This does not mean that your heart has been opened and that your consciousness has been. Power will bring with it the temptation to abandon the great work, a slave to potency. Many people feel quite satisfied with basic psychological wellness and decide to proceed no further. After all, what more is there to desire? Should such a thing happen, what will you do? Once you have conquered the self, to whom will you devote the spoils? Fuel for the Fire 247-248 Chapter SOPHUS Curriculum, at a glance, to be completed in 6 to 18 months. Philosopher's Formula. 1. The 4-7-8 breath, third chakra. 2. Toth cube of space. 3. The banishing ritual of pentagram. 4. The banishing ritual of the hexagram. 5. Invoking 4 powers of fire. 6. The middle pillar. 7. Bhagyan and Saluth. 8. Philosopher's meditation. 9. Banishing 4 powers of fire. 10. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Other rituals by format as directed. 1. Invoking and banishing Venus. 2. Invoking and banishing Mars. Additional exercises. 1. Daily Tarot Card or Tree of Life Spread. 2. Voice exercises required reading. 1. The 5th Knowledge Lecture, from your textbook, Regardize the Golden Dawn, pages 77-111. 2. Talismans, from your textbook, pages 479-504. 3. How to Win Friends and Influence People, by Dale Carnegie. 4. Myths to Live By Joseph Campbell. 5. Enochian Magic for Beginners, by Donald Tyson. Written assignments. 1. Outline of the Philosopher's Ritual. 2. Diary assignments, including tracking of Venus projects. 1. Enochian Tablet of Fire. 2. The Tree of Life and its Saluth. 3. Drawing of Kabbalah of 9 Chambers. 4. Drawing of Geomantic Talismanic Forms. 5. Drawing of Sulfur and Tree of Life. 6. Drawing of Sultan the Tree of Life. 7. Drawing of Trinity operating throughout Sephiroth. 8. Drawing of Garden of Eden after the Fall. 9. Drawing of Venus on Tree of Life. 10. Calvary Cross of 12 Squares. 11. Solid Pyramid of Elements. 12. Calvary Cross off in Squares. Optional implements. 1. The Fire Wand. 2. The Sword Fuel for the Fire 249-250 Chapter 8 PLLLOSOPHUS Curriculum Details Daily Philosopher's Formula. Once you have finished constructing the Enochian Tablet of Fire, see Projects for this chapter, page 260. Do the series of rituals once per day in the order presented below, one right after the other. Place the tablet in the south position somewhere approximately between the level of your eyes and the level of your heart. While you are working on finishing the tablet, you can begin this daily formula without its body and its silent exercise. Do not have the other Enochian tablets exposed during your daily Philosopher's rituals. You can either put them away or cover them with a cloth of a color that corresponds to their respective elements. 1. Breath of fire. Most civilized people have learned to breathe in a repressive manner, in which the gut feelings are avoided. They effectively isolate the mind from the body and decrease vitality, estranging the brain consciousness from its emotions and its animal nature. As you learned in practice, the lower animal and vegetable levels of awareness are crucial instruments of spiritual growth. You can commune with them best in the sensations of the lower parts of your torso. The Philosopher's Grade overall exposes you to your animal powers more directly than ever, and deep abdominal breaths assist you in embracing them. This exercise benefits you by increasing your capacity for positive energy, giving you more charisma, confidence, sex appeal, and personal power. You have come a long way through the other grades, banishing unbalanced influences, purifying your bodies, and making them worthier vehicles of the light. You should now be ready to increase the flow of life force through those vehicles. It is important that you breathe deeply into the belly, a technique you have learned through your previous exercises. As you breathe, tune into your deep abdominal breaths and make sure that as you expand the breath into the upper chest, you are maintaining the deep expansion into the abdomen. In other words, you should sustain the downward pressure even as you inhale higher into the lungs. Many students evade their total breath capacity due to a deep fear of life. Abdominal breathing should not be a mere ripple that proceeds from bottom to top. It should take advantage of the capacity of the entire torso, beginning with the abdomen and ending at the top of the rib cage. Lie on your back and bring your heels up halfway toward your buttocks, such that the knees are elevated. Place your hands on your upper abdomen, such that your index fingers nearly touch at the navel and your thumbs point loosely at each other, about an inch apart. Begin by doing circular breathing, slowly, as you did in the ORECUs. Breathe into the count of 4 full seconds, and breathe out to the count of 4 full seconds, feeling a hidden wheel-like motion. Then stop counting in 4s and begin counting each breath as you pick up speed. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and imagine the sound of a large steam engine as it picks up speed rapidly. Do 21 breaths of rapid diaphragmatic breathing. Stay relaxed throughout. After the 21 breaths, slow the circular breath back down into counts of 4 seconds. During this slow time, visualize the pores of the skin in the recesses of the body opening as the nourishing atmosphere enters and sweeps through every deep place within the body, rerouting it and rarefying it. By the time the abdomen and chest are filled to capacity, feel the air within you begin to converge on a point inside your torso between the navel and sternum, the third chakra, called Manipura in Sanskrit. On the out-breath, see that the air that you inhaled rushes out from that point as sparks of light radiating in all directions. This fountain of scintillating stars projects the body of light from your Manipura chakra into your physical frame, as though into a mold. After a minute or longer has passed, do another set of 21 rapid diaphragmatic breaths without visualizing the light. Then relax into the slow circular breath again with its visualization. Do a total of 3 sets of 21 rapid breaths alternated with slow visualization breaths. After the last minute of slow breaths, relax and breathe normally. Feel the tingling throughout your body as though it were the very presence of your body of light. Pair up the visualization of this glowing inner body with that of the physical sensation. Note any involuntary tendency to tense up in response to your bodily sensations. Relax. This exercise can be startlingly potent, having effects that reach into your normal daily life. Record your experiences in your magical diary. If our experience during the exercise itself becomes too intense or unpleasant, omit this exercise from your formula and then pick up the exercise again, perhaps every other day if necessary. You may use the standard 4-full breath as a substitute if necessary, including with it the visualization of projecting light from the third chakra. Fuel for the Fire 251-252 Chapter 8. 2. Ascend into the cube of space. 3. The Lesser Banishing Ritual of Pentagram. 4. The Banishing Ritual of Hexagram. 5. Invoking the 4 powers of fire standing in the center of our circle, turn clockwise to face the south. Trace the invoking pentagram with fire and red light as you vibrate the following divine name, YHVHTZABAODH, pronounced Yahovah. At the commencement of the last syllable, stab the center of the pentagram and see it burst into scarlet flame, charged and sealed by the name of God that governs the sapphire corresponding to the element of fire. In the center of the pentagram, trace the sigil of Leo in luminous green while vibrating. ELOHIM near the end of your vibration, stab the center of the sigil and see it burst into green flame. Give the great sign of philosophy. Stand upright with your feet together, bring your flattened hands together, touching index finger to index finger and thumb to thumb and forming a triangle between, and hold this triangle pointing upward momentarily before your forehead. Holding this salute to the powers of fire, say, I purpose to send death, wrapped in tongues of flame, even as it resteth unmoved upon thy brow. Turn clockwise to the west. Trace again the invoking pentagram of fire and the sigil of Leo, vibrating the divine names as before. Give the great sign, and say, Thou appearest in the movement of flame itself, and the created worlds are borne aloft on the ravishments of thy love. Turn clockwise to the east, tracing the sigil, vibrating the names, and giving the great sign as before, saying, Thou goest forth as a hot wind before the feet of the wise, even as thou becomest a consuming whirlwind for ignorance. Turn now to the north, performing the same actions, but say, A great heat thou art, pressing from within the shell of matter. The rose is a clay image of thy hidden flame. Amen. Stand in the center of your circle and give the Philosopher's great sign to the east. Visualize a white tree of life formulating there at the eastern edge of your circle. Its light fills the circle. Holding the salute to the rising light, vibrate the following divine name and say the prayer that follows, YHVHTZABAOTH. Blessed be thou. Leader of armies is thy name. Amen. Feel the heat of the red fire and green sigil as you see them around you in your mind's eye. Feel the awe of the God names that you have used to charge them. 6. The middle pillar. 7. The body in its xyloth. The body in its xyloth is built in the king scale of color. The colors of the Sephiroth in its xyloth are absolutely the most rarefied, and the powers that you call upon are the names of God himself. God names are very potent, exalted, and mysterious, and they are beyond the ability of any magician to control. They are called upon with the utmost reverence, and whether or not they respond is unpredictable. When they do come to bear upon a ceremony, they are considered to be perfect and infallible. This is why they are always called upon first, before the magician attempts to call upon entities from lower worlds, such as archangels, angels, elementals, and demons. After performing the middle pillar exercise, move your chair to the center of your circle and sit facing south into the Enochian tablet of fire. Visualize the complete tree of life situated in your aura. See it as completely filled with brilliance, with no colors. Draw a current of brilliance down from tether to mouth as you vibrate once. ELOLLM fuel for the Fire 253-254 Chapter 8. Next, vibrate the name of God that governs mouth 4 times as you see the color of that sphere filling with yellow, the xylotic color of mouth. 8 BONAIHARETZ, and finally, vibrate the God name 4 more times as you see the whole tree within turn luminous yellow. Sit meditating in this radiant yellow tree of life for at least 10 minutes. In past grades, you have visualized an earthen body, an etheric double, or an aura to represent your body as it might appear in different Kabbalistic worlds Ashaya, Yetzirah, and Bria. Your Tsilithic body is so exalted that it is beyond your powers of visualization. So you now call up the impression of the tree of life within your body to represent, in abstract, that ultimate monadic body. The tree of life is perhaps the same geometric form that the narrator of Dante's Divine Comedy sees on the throne of God. The body in Malkuth of Atziluth is to be practiced in this way daily for 7 days. Following that, move on the next higher Sephira, Isad. To construct the body in Isad of Atziluth, sit before the Enochian tablet of fire as before and draw a current of shimmering white energy down into Malkuth as you vibrate Elohim. Then vibrate the God name for Malkuth, Adonai Haaretz, 1 time as you visualize the color of Malkuth in Atziluth. Then see a red ray of light rise up from Malkuth to Isad, at your genitals. Vibrate the God name that governs Isad 4 times as you visualize your Isad center filling with an indigo glow. Shaddai El Chai next. See the whole tree of life filling with indigo luminance as you vibrate the God name 4 times again. Sit meditating within this tree for at least 10 minutes. After spending 7 days working on Isad, move to Had, and so on up the tree through Netzach, Tifereth, Jeborah, and the rest. The God name correspondences for the Sephiroth appear in your textbook on page 64. The color correspondences are given on page 99. Once you have completed your journey up the tree in the manner described above, having spent 1 week with the name and color of each Sephira, it is time to simplify the exercise. For the remainder of the Philosophist grade, after your middle pillar work, sit before the fire tablet and return your attention to the sphere of light above your head. See it as the color of Kether in Atziluth, pure colorless brilliance. Vibrate the God name that governs Kether 4 times. EHEIH, then bring the attention to the area to the left of your head and see a soft, pale blue sphere, the color of Chokmah in Bria. Vibrate Chokmah's God name 4 times. YAH, continue on down the tree in this manner, from Sephira to Sephira, in the order of the lightning flash, seeing the sphere with its colors and vibrating the corresponding God name. When you finish with Malkuth, spread your visualization across your whole body. See all the Sephiroth in their Atzilutic colors as they are situated in and around your body. Float in the tree of Atziluth for up to 20 minutes. See your aura glow brilliant white in its presence. Intensify the visualization, making it as bright as you can. Then relax in the afterglow of your work. Sephira 10 Malkuth 9 Isad 8 Pod 7 Netzach 6 Tifereth 5 Gebura 4 Chized 3 Bina 2 Chokmah 1 Kether Atzilutic color yellow indigo violet purple amber clear pink rose orange deep violet crimson soft blue brilliance God name Adonai Haaretz Shaddai El Chai Elohim Zabioth YHVH Zabioth YHVH Elovidoth Elohim Jiber LYHVH Elohim Yahai meaning Lord of the earth, almighty living God, gods of hosts, God, the omniscient gods of battles, God, the creator, the Father, LAM. 8. Philosophist meditation. This meditation comes from your textbook, The Golden Dawn, page 80. Let the Philosophist meditate upon the symbol of the fire triangle in all its aspects. Let him contemplate the symbol of the planet Venus until he realizes the universal love which would express itself in perfect service to all mankind and which embraces nature, both visible and invisible. Let him identify himself with the powers of fire, consecrating himself wholly until the burnt sacrifice is consummated fuel for the fire 255-256 chapter 8 and the Christ is conceived by the Spirit. Let him meditate upon the triplicity of fire, its attributes and correspondences. 9. Banishing the 4 powers of fire. Perform this ritual in the same manner as its invoking version, except use the banishing pentagram of fire, visualizing it in red light as before. You need not give the great sign or prayer. 10. The lesser banishing ritual of pentagram. Other rituals performed as directed. 1. Invoking and banishing Venus and Netzach. The Sephira of this grade is also the Sephira that governs Venus. The invocation of Venus is to be done on Fridays only, before the middle pillar exercise. The banishing is to be performed that day also, after the Philosopher's meditation. Your hexagram, in this ritual, will be emerald green, and so will your sigil of the planet. To invoke Venus, face in the planet's direction and trace the green invoking hexagram while vibrating. Arita on the last syllable. Stab the center of the hexagram, seeing it burst into green flame, charged by the name of God. Then trace the sigil of Venus in the center of the hexagram in light while vibrating. YHVHTZABAODH vibrate the names alternately 3 more times, calling to the planet by the names of God. Feel the luxurious, affectionate energy of Venus enter your circle, filling it and filling you. Say, innocent maiden, nurturing maid, who bestoweth the favors of love, who whirleth in veils before the rising sun, let a ray of the victory descend upon me to awaken in this sphere the powers of Venus. Pause, face east, and reflect on the beautiful qualities of Venus for a moment before continuing. When you banish Venus, draw the banishing hexagram and planetary sigil in the direction of the planet, vibrating the 2 divine names appropriately. Don't say the prayer, however. 2. Invoking and banishing Mars. Invoke Mars every Tuesday, before the middle pillar exercise. Banish after the Philosopher's meditation. To invoke, face the direction of the planet and draw a red invoking hexagram as you vibrate. Arita, draw the red sigil of Mars in the center of the hexagram as you vibrate. ELOLM Gibber, pronounced LOHEM Gibber. Vibrate the 2 names 3 more times alternately as you face Mars. Then say, Warrior of Heaven. Great right arm of the Most High, who cutteth away and burneth the enemies of life and light. Penetrate the sphere with thy ray of justice that the powers of Mars are awakened herein. Feel the harsh onslaught of Mars enter your circle, filling it and you. Meditate on its uses for a moment. To banish, use, middle dot, the red banishing hexagram and red sigil of Mars IJ:1, the direction of the planet. Vibrate the God names as before, but do not utter the invocation. Additional exercises: daily tarot card or tree of life spread. Continue doing your daily tarot card meditation as before, but if you have any questions about the hidden currents of change around you, perform a tree of life divination to gain some perspective. Do at least 1 tree of life divination per week in regard to your practical or spiritual concerns. Use the steps that follow. Fuel for the Fire 257-258 Chapter 8. 1. Select a card that represents you or person for your divining. In the Tree of Life pattern before you on the table, and place the significator card at its center, at Tifereth. 2. Start together, laying out cards from the top of the deck in the order of lightning flash. Place the Tifereth card right over the significator. 3. Interpret the question now based on your knowledge of the tree so far. Malkuth indicates the final outcome, or the complete expression of the issue in the material world. Voice exercises. The voice is one of the most powerful instruments you have at your command. When the vocal cords come together and resonate with the passing of breath, this action represents light and darkness coming together and generating vibrations in the field of passing time. Contemplating the act of vibration with this idea serves to link your voice to the creative power of your higher self. It is therefore essential that you make some effort to train your voice to generate more power and ritual. Simple singing lessons can do wonders for this ability. For the Philosopher's grade, spend at least 2 months in vocal training, either with a trained professional or with an audio training course. You can study singing, speech, or chanting. Any kind of vocal training will do, but the most important aspect to focus on is resonance. When you hold a sustained pitch, it should be clear, penetrating, and powerful, capable of carrying consciousness past the physical plane. In addition, some exercises are included to focus your increasing proficiency in the right direction. Do each of these exercises daily for 1 month each, unless the exercise specifies differently. 1. Pick passages from Golden Dawn rituals or other rituals that you find inspiriting and speak them into a recording device, preferably into a high-quality microphone so that your voice is recorded and played back much as it actually sounds. Convey with your voice the feelings you think the various passages should convey. Listen to your words afterward. Do this once per day for 2 weeks at the start of the Philosopher's grade. Do it also for 2 weeks as you near the completion of your assignments. See if you notice any improvements. 2. 3. In your ability to unleash and channel your feelings and ritual as a result of this exercise. Get an audiobook read by a celebrity whose voice you admire. Listen to the audiobook daily. Stop it in places and repeat what the reader has said. Try to convey the same power, clarity, and conviction with your voice. Spend 20 to 30 minutes per day, 3 days out of each week, in a public place with heavy foot traffic. A mall, a pub or restaurant, or the outside of a movie theater are good locations. Listen to people's voices as they converse, and ignore the verbal content. Listen to inflections and other sounds that people make, rising and falling tones, warning tones, supportive tones, laughter, grunts, moans, maneuvering and meandering sounds, and so forth. Upon rising each morning, grimace and roar ferociously as you stretch. Listen to your voice as you talk to people throughout the day. Listen to the musical quality of it and the noises that you make. What is the tone of your voice saying that the words themselves cannot? Write your observations in your diary. 4, 5. 6. Focus on people's gestures as they communicate. Notice the different kinds of stances, hand motions, defensive arm positions, and hidden nuances. Written assignments. 1. Outline of Philosopher's ritual done as for the Neophyte ritual. 2. Diary assignments, including the tracking of Venus. As you do your daily diary entries throughout Philosopher's, include an extra heading every day in which you track the planet Venus as it passes through the signs of the zodiac. Also note when it is in retrograde. In addition, as you work with the god names in the body in its Silith exercise, write the name every day of the god name, in Hebrew, you are currently invoking. See page 64 of your textbook, The Golden Fuel for Fire 259-260 Chapter 8 done. Furthermore, incorporate the following practices into your writing, 1 practice each month, unless the practice itself specifies a different length of time. 1. Take 1 trip to the zoo. Observe the way the animals express themselves. Note movement, plumage, colors, gestures, and other visual cues. Make sure that you visit the apes and monkeys too. Spend a week in your daily writing comparing the various people you meet throughout your day to the animals you met at the zoo. 2. Note good and bad speakers throughout the day. Who express themselves very well, who had magnetism, charisma, or power, who lacked it, why? 3. Did you meet any beautiful people during the day? Each day, note at least one who is beautiful in some way. 25. 4. Do you have any addictions? Cigarettes? Caffeine? Television? Using your judgment so as to avoid doing anything dangerous to your health, try quitting one of them cold turkey for 1 or 2 weeks. Make notes in your diary of the physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts that come up as you abstain. Projects. 1. Enochian and Tablet of Fire. Complete this project before any of the others so that you can begin your daily Philosopher's formula of rituals properly. See the diagram on the opposite page. Paint the shaded areas of the grid red. Paint all of the rings of the seal in the same color. Paint the background within the seal green. The flaming Hebrew letter yods should alternate in color, the repeating sequence being red, yellow, violet. Paint the letters in the following manner. Portion of fire tablet red squares, upper left quadrant red squares, Upper right red squares, lower left red squares, lower right all the white squares in the tablet. Color of letters yellow, color of air blue, color of water black, color of earth green, contrasting color of fire black, contrasting color of spirit. The Enoch Ian tablet of fire fuel for the fire 261-262 chapter 8. Do not do any ritual work or meditations with this Enoch Ian tablet beyond the instructions you have been given so far. It is important to avoid any direct work with the Enoch Ian system of magic until the elemental grades are finished. Remember that you can read about anything you like, but keep your practice confined just to the directions of this book. 2. The Tree of Life in its xylith. Paint the Sephiroth and paths in their xylotic colors. See page 99 of your textbook, The Golden Dawn, for color correspondences. Add this painting to your book afters. 3. Drawing off Kabbalah off 9 chambers. Reproduce this drawing from page 497 of your textbook. Add it and the other philosophers' ritual diagrams you create to your book of temple diagrams. 4. Drawing off geomantic talismanic forms. Reproduce this drawing from page 494 of your textbook. 5. Drawing of sulfur on the Tree of Life. Reproduce this drawing from page 84 of our textbook. 6. Drawing of salt on the Tree of Life. Reproduce this drawing from page 84 of our textbook. 7. Drawing off Trinity operating through the Sephiroth. Reproduce this drawing from page 84 of our textbook. 8. Drawing off Garden of Eden after the fall. Reproduce this drawing from the color plate opposite page 118 of our textbook. 9. Drawing of Venus on the Tree of Life. Reproduce this drawing from page 79 of our textbook. 10. Calvary Cross of 12 squares. Reproduce this drawing from page 79 of your textbook. Make this out of stiff cardboard or wood like you have done with the crosses you have made in previous grades. Cut it out so that it is an object that you can hold in your hand. 11. Solid pyramid of elements. Reproduce this drawing from page 79 of your textbook. You can try building the solid pyramid of the elements by cutting out and folding this design, but you will quickly discover that the line drawing is not quite accurate for the creation of a 3-dimensional pyramid. Some puzzling over it with a ruler, pencil, and scissors will produce eventually your own truncated pyramid. Label the faces before you fold and tape it into its shape. 12. Calvary Cross off in squares. Reproduce this drawing from page 79 of our textbook. This is an especially important symbol for a later time. Prepare this as you did the cross of 12 squares. Optional implements the fire one. Probably the easiest way to create this magical weapon is to shop for one online. There are a few very good online retailers, last I checked, who sell Golden Dawn implements. Place your 3 elemental weapons, the pentacle, the air dagger, and the chalice before you and determine the approximate dimensions that would be acceptable. No elemental weapon should dwarf, or be dwarfed by, its companions. Finally, make sure that you order a blank weapon, not one that is already painted. You must paint the colors, letters, and sigil on your own at the very least. Ideally, the shaft should have a magnetized iron rod through its middle, but this is not of the utmost importance. Failing to find a suitable one online, you may opt to construct your own. You can do this by obtaining pieces of wood at a craft store, 3 sections of wooden dowel, 4 disc-shaped dividing pieces, and a wooden Akam or egg-shaped tip. These you can glue together with very strong glue, such as epoxy. Fuel for the Fire 263-264 Chapter 8 Fire 1 God Name, Y, T Archangel, Angel, Ruler, River of Paradise, Cardinal Point, Name of Element, Motto, I11I1, J1IV J1IV, L011 feet. YHVH Zabioth Michael Errol Seraph PISON Duomish recite the prayer of fire spirits from page 196 of our textbook before working on the construction and painting of our wand for the day. Prime the wood or paint it from head to foot with gesso. I fear one has an iron rod. Make sure to leave the metal exposed at both ends. Use metallic gold paint to write 3 elongated Hebrew yods on the wand's tip. Paint the dividing sections of the wand with the same gold paint. Then, paint on the sigil and names of power associated with fire. These you obtain from the table above. YHVH Zebaoth, Michael, Errol, Seraph, Pison, Jerome, Yesh, and your motto. Make sure that the god name and your motto appear on the tip, between yods. The remaining sigil with their corresponding names appear down the shaft, 2 on either side of each of the 3 sections. Seal the completed wand with an acrylic spray. Put it in storage with the other 3 weapons. Do not put your 4 weapons together on the altar atop during ritual. If you would like them present, put them into the 4 directions outside your circle, each on its corresponding side altar, if you are using side altars. They will come together on the altar atop later. The sword. There is a section in your textbook about the magic sword, page 317. The sword is essentially a glorified banishing dagger. When you are an adept, and you require a very powerful, suggestive symbol for dealing with unruly forces, the sword should be ready in your temple. The correspondences that your textbook suggests painting on the sword are good ones, related to Gebura. But in reality, painting a handle and hilt red and green take away from the drama of naked steel and ritual. If you just spend a good amount of time locating a straight, symmetrical, double-sided blade with a cross hilt, that should be enough. It can be a challenge to procure one that is plain, without movie logos or overly dramatic scroll work on it. Do not consecrate the sword until you have finished with the portal grade. You can use it to do an LBRP if you like, but do not use it for such a minor banishing too often. The sword is to be reserved for times when it is necessary to pull out the big guns, and it should be used for nothing else. In a ritual space that is too small for such a large implement, you can hold the sword in your right hand and direct its tip by holding the blade carefully in your left. Fuel for the Fire 265-266 Chapter 8 Philosophist Checklist. Before you proceed to the next grade, review this checklist and make sure that all of the requirements are met. D. I have completed the Enochian Tablet of Fire. D. I have painted the Tree of Life in its Siloth. D. I have finished Bagan its Aluthru Okather. D. I have completed Thevacultrayan and Gen voice exercises. D. I have read the 5th knowledge lecture. O. I have read Talismans. O. I have read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Might still live by. Have you read Enochian Magic for Beginners? D. I have outlined the Philosophist Ritual. D. I have completed the area assignments. D. I have drawn the Kabbalah of 9 chambers. Drawn Sulfur and Tree of Life. O. I have drawn the geomantic talismanic forms. D. I have drawn Salt on the Tree of Life. D. I have drawn Trinity operating through of Sephiroth. Drawn Garden of Eden after the fall. Venus on Tree of Life. D. I have drawn Calvary Cross of 12 squares. D. I have drawn the Pyramid of Elements. O. I have drawn the Calvary Cross of 10 squares. June the Portal. It is a time to pause, reflect, and gather together what you have learned. The rituals done in this grade reverse the process of analysis that characterizes the outer order. You have passed through the 4 kingdoms of the elements. You have examined the forces that rise up from nature to create what you are. You no longer condemn any part of yourself. You have seen your ties to family and society loosen. You have glimpsed the futility of the self-centered life and avoided aidfully the temptation to remain in the world of competition. The time has come to dispassionately gather all of the pieces together. Portal is a grade of reintegration. portal does not correspond to any sapphire on the tree of life, but it does relate to a position on the middle pillar just beneath Tiferet. It therefore corresponds to the 25th path and the 14th tarot trump, Temperance. The angel on the card personifies a kind of celestial alchemist. In your current situation, your life is his laboratory, for you have gathered for him all of the necessary ingredients for his work. You have purified and organized the components of your being. The angel now combines them and gradually begins to increase the heat of the fire. The real work of magic is about to begin. The angel traditionally cooks using two substances, fire and water, signifying two opposing forces. These are respectively representative of the two realities of the eternal and relative worlds, the All-Mind and XIV 267-268 Chapter 9 Its creation, spirited matter. On the human scale, they relate to Kundalini energy and consciousness. The word Kundalini comes from the vocabulary of the Eastern yogi. It means the bioelectric energy of vitality. The two ingredients appear to interact in the process of life, one affecting the other and vice versa. Your vitality affects the quality of your consciousness. Your quality of consciousness affects your vitality. However, the two never can mix. An impassable abyss separates them. The human life is a meeting ground for spirited matter, two lovers that are permitted to dance together, but never allowed to touch. Their spiritual longing for union can never be quenched, can never be consummated in the physical world. Anyone who tells you it can is selling something. To illustrate this irreconcilable duality, an example of a spool of thread is helpful. Imagine a spool on which are entwined two very fine threads. One thread is red, the other blue. As they collect on the spool, their colors appear to merge, forming what appears to be a purple thread, as red and blue combined make purple. The colors seem to have mixed, but if you look closely enough at the spool, you can still discern the two threads of separate color. The purple thread is an illusion. The two colors that combine, analogous to Kundalini, red, and consciousness, blue. The color purple represents the ego, and the spool is analogous to the physical body. This is perhaps an oversimplified but very telling example of how the ego is a mirage. When the student learns to rise on the planes, the gateway to within is found in his ability to look closely at the different forces that combine to produce his illusory self. Descending into the minute fibers of his being, he sees the separation between the different elements that compose the personality. He discovers for himself that his identity does not really have any inherent existence, that the shade of purple that he identifies as himself is nothing but a combination of cosmic forces. Those cosmic forces might be unified on some higher plane, but nowhere does this happen in the material world. As he plunges deeper into himself, the spaces between the threads become ever wider, revealing the abyss and a gate to the higher worlds. To this example we can now apply the Kabbalistic formula of the Tetragrammaton, YHVH, the unspeakable four-letter name of God. Yod equals Kundalini, He equals consciousness, Vau equals ego, He, final equals physical body. Yod and He are the universal father and mother, red and blue, that come together to produce the sun, Vau, purple, who is the individual that takes up residence with the bride, or the physical body, the final He. This is represented graphically in an abstract image of the human form by stacking the letters of the Tetragrammaton vertically. Note how these four forces are, in reality, operating in separate worlds. Yod equals fire, equals Etzilut, He equals water, equals Bria, Vau equals air, equals Yetzirah, He, final, equals earth, equals Ashaya. They do not mix with each other. They only appear to do so to those other to look closely enough and see the different threads at work, seeing illusory objects and events. Another illustration that may better clarify this idea of consolidated elements occurs in one of the emblems of the portal grade. the Maltese cross. It is a cross formed of 4 triangles. The portal ritual explains that this variation of the cross symbolizes Malth with its 4 elemental quadrants in the Briatic color scale. The quadrants are opened up, separated by an influx of spiritual light that wells up from within, bursting wide the cracks. It also represents the student who has learned to look closely at the threads within and see them as they actually are, separated elemental forces vibrating within perception, creating patterns of interaction. These the portal 269-270 chapter 9 separate threads spool together and produce various harmonics that the student's mind mistakes for physical objects, images, or concepts, the biggest illusion being, of course, his own personality. The only phenomena of perception that are real are the fundamental forces. All perceived phenomena are aggregates of the 4 inviolate elements. The phonation of the Maltese cross invoked daily in portal, the 5th element, spirit, is key to the opening of the student to higher influences. It jumpstarts the synergy that is characteristic of an adept. Like a spotlight that reveals the underlying separation of the 4 elements, it reveals how the ego is created, and also how the higher self may project its influence upon the playing field of the elements. For the higher self can never come out into the outer phenomenal world. It can, however, by directing the elements of that world, reveal its influence as both immanent and transcendent. In true Kabbalistic fashion, the realm of the divine can be seen as both within and apart from physical matter. Lightning in a bottle portal, like neophyte, is a probationary grade. As you do the ritual work, some rapid and fundamental changes begin to occur. If you have done all of the outer order work sincerely and steadfastly up until this point, some kind of result is assured. If, however, you have rushed through the grades and neglected some ingredients of key importance, you jeopardize your chance at a lasting transformation of consciousness. The worst thing that can happen to the negligent student is that he gets the desired result. The product of an incomplete alchemical formula is a fleeting and short-lived spiritual high. The euphoria or vision of beauty ends, and he is left with his life as it was before, but with the insulting knowledge of how unsatisfactory it is in relation to his brush with enlightenment. Flashes of illumination that do not leave a lasting mark are the most dangerous kinds of spiritual experience. The common phenomenon of the born-again Christian is a good example. The power of the Tifereth current, so immanent in Christian mythology and methodology, can quickly rush forth and engulf a new believer in a vision of harmony, beauty, and immortality. And, of course, most unsuspecting practitioners of the Christian faith, as with people of any other faith, have not yet done the groundwork of consolidating and purifying their lower nature, which prepares them for such an experience. Their mental bodies do not have the integrity to contain a new state of being, and the result is that the experience fails to take root. It leaves them with the gnawing memory of a grace that could have been. A zealous urge to return to their vision ensues, and the born-again zealot promptly sets out to use his reckless modes of perception to chase after the echo of an elusive state of mind. This produces something quite disastrous, as the violence associated with fundamentalism demonstrates. The animal faculties, once vacated by the light and thrown back upon their own resources, interpret the religious experience in their own visceral terms. The lower self is still in charge, not realizing yet that its materiality-driven goals interfere with enlightenment. Someone who has done the groundwork of the soul would know from experience that the animal soul is not the real self, and he would be ready to relinquish it to the service of the realities of the religious experience. But the born-again zealot hasn't learned to see the deceptive nature of his ego. He insists that his newfound faith is correct, and that anyone who has had a different experience is incorrect. Since he hasn't learned to value every aspect of his personality, no matter how dark, he uses his newly acquired high standards to condemn, ridicule, and punish others in the name of his opposition. Since he hasn't learned how to disengage from the tribal mindset, he insists on making social controls that enforce obedience to his visionary experience. He may create a religious group that shuns everyone who is not in agreement with his The Portal 271-272 Chapter 9 vision. This can result in a clumsy and hurtful effort at utopia, whether it be in the government, church, village, or household. Familiar? This is not an attempt at Christian bashing. The example of born-again phenomenon, I hope, will explain how initiations in the occult world fail. Christian mythology and methodology are actually among the most sublime and potentially most advanced experiences. The mysteries of the Christ force within each of us should only be explored, in my opinion, by the advanced, well-prepared mind. It would be better, perhaps, if the Christian Church required 5 years of Zen discipline before actual introduction to the mythology of Jesus. Contact with WITCHCRAFT cannot be maintained by a mind that is still mesmerized by the machinery of the pecking order or hell-bent on deriving security from circumstance. The power of the Christ force and the necessity to withhold it from the unprepared are the reasons why the inner order of the Golden Dawn, the Rosii Rubiae et Aureae Crucis, is secretive and reclusive. It is also, incidentally, why Christian symbolism is almost unavoidable in the inner order. The Golden Dawn system is somewhat Egyptian on the outside and symbolically Christian on the inside. This is not to say that the Christian mythos is of any value as an end unto itself. There are other mythologies that zero in on WITCHCRAFT just the same, and they may work better for some students of the occult. Most other myths are certainly less of a risk for the unprepared. If you have the so-called Jesus allergy, perhaps because you were abused with religion in your upbringing, and you wish to avoid Christianity because of its negative associations, there are other ways of exploring the inner mysteries. As far as the Golden Dawn is concerned, a minimal amount of Christian mythology is required to understand the inner order symbolism. Please do not confuse the end with the means. You are not required to become Christian to become an adept. The symbols are simply tools. Misunderstanding is another reason for secrecy. It cannot be escaped that human beings, however well domesticated, are still animals, following the dictates of their million-year-old master. Their hardwired programming tends to respond explosively to anything that loosens its stranglehold on the divine spark within. The inner secrets of ancient mystery traditions have been protected by oaths and threats, mainly in response to the events of history. The atrocities committed by members of the Hebrew, Christian, and Muslim faiths throughout their combined histories are a testimony to the power of the Western myths and to the necessity of keeping the inner teachings of the Christ force veiled. The myths of the West are like lightning in a bottle, more literally than you might think. Do not dare open the bottle unless you have done all of the groundwork of purifying your lower nature. As MacGregor Mathers puts it, and know thou that this is not to be done lightly for thy amusement or experiment, seeing that the forces of nature were not created to be thy plaything or toy. Unless thou doest thy practical magical works with solemnity, ceremony, and reverence, thou shalt be like an infant playing with fire, and thou shalt bring destruction upon thyself. 1. Bear in mind, then, that portal is a grade of honesty. The student summarizes his experience of the great work and checks to make sure that he has completed every assignment. If he has missed an ingredient, he must make up that work now to complete the alchemical formula. Have you had psychological counseling? Are you satisfied with the quality of all of your Enochian tablets? Have you created and maintained a physically healthy lifestyle? Have you stopped dealing out judgments? Have you read all of the assigned books? Written every assigned outline? Done every required daily ritual? Go back and review the entire curriculum. More about the pentagram. The peculiar way of drawing pentagrams in Golden Dawn style magic is very telling about the nature of the four elements and their relationship to spirit. The principle for invoking air, fire, water, and earth involves starting the pentagram with a line rushing toward the angle attributed to the desired force. The first favors the element it rushes toward, allegedly having the effect of concentrating the force through the pentagram and sigil used. When it comes to the invocation and banishment of spirit, the method of drawing the pentagram departs from the previous one. For the invocation of spirit, there are 2 pentagrams involved. In either one, the first line doesn't even touch the spirit angle, but instead connects 2 of the physical elements. The Portal 273-274 Chapter 9, there are several occultists who remark that the Golden Dawn's method of the pentagram makes for an inconsistent and clumsy system of invocation and banishment. It is surprising how quick students are to dismiss one of the fundamental techniques of a system that is the foundation of almost all Western magic today. It is my experience that much of the supposed awkwardness of the material that Mathers developed is attributable to a much deeper significance than is immediately apparent. It is best to take a generous nature with the Golden Dawn system when it begins to look odd. You will likely find the value of its approach later. Time and again, I have found that the middle dot techniques that seemed needlessly circuitous had invisible mechanisms that one could only discover through practice. Do not be too quick to force a spiritual technique to make sense, otherwise, you may, out of ignorance, modify it into powerlessness. Active, passive, invoking, banishing. In the case of the Golden Dawn spirit pentagrams, one form is considered active and one passive. Meditate on the nature of spirit. Try to pin down and perceive it directly in your mind. If you have done the outer order work thoroughly and diligently up through Philosophists, you will find such an exercise laughable. Spirit is not an element. It cannot be experienced face to face like a gust of wind or a splash of water, nor can it be approached directly. It doesn't exist in any particular place. You cannot increase and decrease its quantity. You can't even touch it, much less invoke and banish it. So what is one really doing when one draws the active invoking pentagram of spirit and vibrates the appropriate name? Consider for a moment the 2 substances that the angel in the temperance card is swapping in the vases. See them as active and passive qualities, light and darkness, fire and water, yin and yang. Remember the principle of balance and particularly add to that the idea of balance in motion. The angel in the card represents a principle of movement that continuously adjusts the relationship of opposing forces. The dynamic, springy, and vital quality of life that we experience in the flesh is the expression of that balancing principle. It maintains balance and order in a universe that is ruled primarily by chaos, decay, and darkness, forces of Saturn. Spirit may have some kind of substance on a higher plane of existence, but here in the realm of the senses, it can only be revealed as a pattern among the elements, a condition of equilibrium. This is why the Golden Dawn refers to the invoking pentagrams of spirit alternately as equilibrating. Spirit does not exist in the realm of the elements, but it is evidenced by the relationship between those elements. When we call upon spirit, we are actually manipulating active and passive energies and creating a beautiful balance, commonly experienced as vitality, clarity, joy, and calm. The pentagram of spirit actives is started by drawing a line from the fire angle to the air angle, or in other words, a line between the 2 active elements. The pentagram of spirit passives is begun by drawing a line from the earth angle to the water angle, the 2 passive elements. The combination of these 2 pentagrams is the most important and most beneficial symbolism in your work. They function like 2 cherubim, between which the presence of God may be felt, such as in the legend of the Ark of the Covenant. To put all this more simply, one cannot just point at spirit and command it to appear. Where would you point? All you can do is arrange what you can see into a sort of balance, and then only by the grace of God, if it so pleases him, will you get the result. Enochian magic, the supreme invoking ritual of the pentagram, which comes later in this chapter, marks the first time that the mysterious language of Enochian appears in this book. I have avoided Enochian intentionally until now, and in the Portal Grade I introduce it into your ritual practiced sparingly. Enochian magic has been described as the crowning jewel of the Golden Dawn system of magic. The whole process of Kabbalistic transformation that occurs in the outer order, in my opinion, prepares the student to take command of the Enochian system. The Portal 275-276 Chapter 9, The Western Mysteries, I have already remarked, are like lightning in a bottle. It is obvious that Western culture has put humans in a powerful and dangerous position in regard to harnessing enormous energies and becoming the dominating influence on the planet. Enochian magic tunes right into the spiritual thrust of Western culture, elevating man like a tower above nature in that position of great power. Doing so, it puts the magician in touch with an overlord mentality. Someone who is not an adept will quickly be seduced by the arrogance and righteousness that seems inherent within it. One must have supreme humility to use Enochian. The uppity nature of the Enochian entities should be adopted during ritual but quickly dropped upon return to mundane life. There is great danger to one's spiritual development and to mental and physical health if one takes their influence too seriously. Watch for these effects and head them off before they play upon your human weaknesses. The entities perceived via Enochian ritual tend to resemble the fallen angels of the Hermetic myth presented in this book. Some clairvoyant magicians describe them as coming forth in misshapen forms. The system of Enochian magic explored by John D. and Edward Kelly clearly feeds on the mythology of the Book of Enoch, in which the account of Azazel appears. The actual Enochian language, which is integral to D. and Kelly's system, however, has no apparent relation to any culture in history. It appears to have come right out of the blue, delivered by an angel, evoked by D. through the mediumship of Kelly. But I do not believe that it was channeled by an angel as described in Dr. D's notes. A system of magic does not require a fantastical lineage to be effective. Clearly, whoever invented Enochian, for I do believe that an ordinary human being thought it up, derived some of the names from Kabbalistic tablets containing permuted letters of Hebrew names. Perhaps the whole system is derived that way and most of the tablets have been lost. In my experience, Kabbalah and Enochian work hand in hand. It is best to use them both side by side. Kabbalah tends to work from within the human heart and mind, elevating you into the light of your potential. Enochian works externally, behind the forces of the material world. Enochian spirits appear to have motives even more far-flung from humanity than the Kabbalistic angels. They are therefore dangerous to work with, because they do not always respond wisely. While the angels perceived in Kabbalah might withhold the desired result of a ceremony from a magician whose soul is not ready, the Enochian angels will grant a request whether it harms the magician or not. The Kabbalistic angels, therefore, step in and protect the magician from harm. The Cherubim, for instance, are the mythological characters responsible for binding the fallen angels into the depths of the pit. The Holy and Great One spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, Noah, and said to him, Tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching to the whole earth. The Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot,